Chapter 705. The car whizzed past and rushed into the heavily guarded port. Lars Horn's troops, who were in charge of guarding the port, had already received the news when they were charging at the checkpoint just now. However, when facing the pure white lion that looked several times bigger than the lion Lars Horn's soldiers from Earth, these Lars Horn's soldiers were a little dumbfounded. No matter who it was, when they saw that their assault rifles could not hit the strange pure white lion, they would feel disbelief and disbelief. Don't stop. Mobile engineers, forward, quick. Commander Gallowhorn, who was stationed at the port, immediately ordered the NK-17 mobile engineer unit that had been prepared for a long time to be activated. Even though, if it were an ordinary beast, it would have already fallen into a pool of blood under the assault rifles of Lars Horn's soldiers. It would no longer have its ferocious and tyrannical appearance. However, the pure white lion that was protecting the two cars did not have the slightest possibility of being shot by Lars Horn's soldiers. Therefore, if the commander judged that the caliber was not enough, then he would use a bigger one, until the pure white lion was killed. At the same time, the impact from the large-caliber machine guns or even the cannon's shots might also affect the two cars. Compared to the strange pure white lion, the two cars were much more ordinary. They were so ordinary that only a small team of Lars Horn's soldiers was needed to deal with them. Therefore, the large-caliber machine guns owned by the NK-17 Gallowhorn mobile engineers were launched with a loud bang. At the same time, the mobile engineers, who were positioned further back but were equipped with more lethal missile compartments, followed one after another. They launched missiles in coordination with the barrage launched by the mobile engineers in front of them, completely sealing off the area with the pure white lion as the center. Get down! As soon as Ray Minkai saw the missiles rising from behind the mobile engineers, he immediately shouted to remind the three women sitting next to him and in the back seat. Roar! It was fast at the same time. The moment Lakis, Gudelia, and Fumiton got down, the missiles whistled through the air and landed on their heads. Boom! 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 At this moment, the tearing sound of the machine guns was completely defeated by the rumbling of the missiles. Looking at the fireballs rising into the air and the vibrations coming from the ground, Lars Horn's soldiers guarding the port subconsciously released the triggers in their hands. They silently watched the terrifying storm set off by the missiles that swallowed the pure white lion and the two cars. It was a terrifying weapon personally created by humans. In the past, as long as the mobile engineers under Gallowhorn were dispatched, most of the enemies would not be able to last long under such an attack and would vanish in a puff of smoke. The rumbling sound of the missiles were launched gradually stopped. It was time for the continuous explosions to die down. The commander of Gallowhorn slowly lowered his right hand. The soldiers of Gallowhorn, who were guarding various advantageous offensive positions, raised their muzzles again and aimed at the still tumbling flame storm. Did it succeed? Perhaps this was what everyone was thinking right now. Boom! All of a sudden, a metallic sound rang out, as if some kind of object was stirring. At first, the rolling storm of flames seemed to be repelled from the inside by some kind of fluctuation and spread outward. At first glance, it actually looked like the agitation of a beating heart with a strong driving force. Boom boom! Another agitation sound. Under this agitation sound, all Lars Horn's soldiers tensed up. They didn't know what was going on. However, when the agitation sound came, it made everyone present subconsciously feel a trace of retreat. No. Don't panic. Everyone gather. Fire. Commander Lars Horn, who felt more panic from the bottom of his heart than the others, quickly raised his right hand again and shouted the order to fire. Boom boom boom. The heavy agitation sounded again, and at the same time, it was also an opportunity for everyone to pull the trigger again. Da-da-da-da-da. Boom, boom, boom. The assault rifles in the hands of the soldiers. the large-caliber machine guns of the NK-17 mobile engineers, as well as the missile cabins that were located at the back and still had ammunition left, took turns to fight again. The whistling bullets, the whistling missiles, once again notified the sky above the port. In the hearts of the soldiers who were Lars Horn. In the hearts of the commanders who were Lars Horn. They all decided at the same time. Yes, what a magnificent sight it was! Under such a gorgeous and spectacular scene, no one would be able to escape the fierce firepower. However, amidst the rain of bullets, the unsettling agitation rang out once again. Boom, boom, boom. The moment this agitation swept through the entire scene, it suppressed the sound of gunshots and explosions, completely seizing the initiative from the hands of Lars Horn's troops. Boom, boom. Before the sound fell, another sound followed closely behind. In the rolling storm of flames, a black shadow that was getting stronger and stronger became clearer with the sound of the agitation. Buzz. 2 missiles that soared into the air from behind Lars Horn's troops whistled over. Just as they were about to penetrate the storm of flames and hit the growing black shadow, a beam of light suddenly tore through the storm of flames and streaked across the air, blowing up the 2 incoming missiles on the spot. Boom! Boom! The sound of the 2 missiles that were blown up in the air was like a death knell, calming the minds of all the Lars Horn soldiers present. Boom, boom! The flames surged and soared into the sky. The blazing heat wave was like a monstrous wave that rolled in all directions. Especially the defensive line established by Lars Horn, it was the focus of this soaring heat wave. Hot, hot. The incomparably blazing heat wave only needed a second to burn all the defensive lines established by Lars Horn. In the rising flames, the soldiers wearing Lars Horn's uniforms screamed and retreated, constantly slapping their uniforms on the flames. But it was too late. The extremely impactful and destructive heat wave was like an all-pervasive demon. No matter what the Lars Horn soldiers did, they were unable to extinguish the flames on their bodies. No! No! Save me! No! At this time, the bright and straight uniforms became the coffin that buried the soldiers of Gjallarhorn. The jumping flames were more like the grim reaper waving his scythe, chasing after Lars Horn's soldiers whose will was gradually collapsing and who only had the consciousness to run for their lives left. Ah! Ah! Save! Save me! Hurry! Hurry and save me! The soldiers who were constantly fleeing made Commander Lars Horn, who was standing at the back, unable to do anything, but he still had one last method. He raised his hand and pulled out his gun. Bang! The sharp gunshot woke up the soldiers around Commander Lars Horn. Calm down. It's just fire. However, before Commander Lars Horn, who was trying to stabilize the morale of the soldiers, could finish his words, he was slammed to the ground by a black shadow that fell from the sky. Chi-la, the moment the blazing temperature touched the ground, the terrifying sound that rang out became the nightmare of the Lars Horn soldiers who participated in this interception operation. The heat wave that came head-on made all the Lars Horn soldiers who witnessed it collapse on the spot. Screams, screams, and the soldiers who were rolling and crawling, ignoring how much damage the scorching ground would bring to them, just to quickly escape from the port, were the symbols of the failure of this interception mission. Outside the port, several Lars Horn cruisers were on high alert, waiting for the signal of the landing force guarding the port. But the result was the news that made them feel depressed. We failed. Galio, who boarded Gao de Simonli, sneered. That's natural. From the beginning, I didn't have any hope for the landing force to intercept Gudelia. Lu Lucio's voice came from the communication channel, which made Galio a little surprised. Oh? So, Mr. K, you knew from the beginning that the group of space rats would successfully escape from Dot 3? Mr. Galio, the price of underestimating the enemy is very high. They are not space rats. Lu Lucio reminded him, but Galio didn't know that Lu Lucio had another sentence in his heart that he didn't say out loud. Under the leadership of that knight, the 3 cruisers surrounding .3 port now, 2 MIS teams are probably not enough to fight against that knight. Of course. No matter what, Lucio didn't mean to say this sentence. Humph. Is that so? Space rats, no matter what, are still space rats. Galio's performance was still within Lucio's expectations. Therefore, it didn't matter if he said that sentence or not. Bridge. This is Galio Barjuan. Now I want to attack with the Simonli. Please open the hatch. Galio, who decided not to wait any longer, directly contacted the bridge. His attitude was very firm. Faced with the failure of the landing force, the captain of the cruiser finally bowed his head. Understood. Open the hatch for Special Agent Major Galio immediately. But your wingman? I'll attack too. Please. Lucio, who boarded Schwaber, took the initiative to ask for the attack. Understood. I'll leave the timing to you two. Obviously, although the captain agreed to Galio's request to attack, he still tried to shirk his responsibility to the greatest extent. In response, Galio snorted coldly. In the end, they're still so timid. Those guys from the Control Bureau are really rotten. The next moment, Gauda, Simonli, and Schwaber, who attacked one after another, saw the port being engulfed by flames. That is? Under Gauda's super-high magnification electronic eyes, Galio saw the moment the airships that fled in panic were engulfed by the sea of flames. From the porthole filled with flames, Galio saw the soldiers wearing Lars Horn's uniform with fear on their faces. What's going on? The port exploded? Looks like it. The enemy's ability seems to be beyond our imagination. Compared to Galio, who was in disbelief, Lucio was well aware of the situation. The only culprit who could create such a huge commotion was probably the lion that had always been by Mecha's side. Galio looked at the airships that were struggling to escape in the sea of flames and finally clenched his teeth. Mr. K. Let's save them first. Understood. This decision was not only Galio's decision, but it was also the decision of the 3 cruiser captains behind him. The situation at the port was unknown. Their own people were struggling to escape and needed to be rescued immediately. After a few rounds of discussion, the compromise of carrying out the rescue first and then investigating later was decided. Behind the sea of flames, an airship which had stealthily left .3 successfully flew into the shadow of .3. With the help of the shadow, it flew towards .2. Through the small porthole, Biscat couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief. After relaxing, the fatigue that spread from the depths of his body made the fat man limp. If it weren't for the fact that they were in a state of microgravity, Biscat would probably be lying on the ground and unable to get up. We're saved. Biscat exclaimed. No. We can't relax yet. Mecha, who was piloting the airship, slowly spoke. Now, Lars Horn already has his eyes on ancient Delia. Even if we successfully return to the fishing fire, what we have to face next is the orbital fleet that will line up to intercept us in orbit. Thanks to Mecha's planning and the White Lions, Stance 0, the matter of Gudelia, Biscat and the others in .3 came to an end very quickly. However, the following operation was not any less difficult. Will Lars Horn stop me from landing on Earth? Gudelia, who was applying medicine on Atlas's swollen face, said with a gloomy expression. I'm afraid so. Lakis nodded, but she didn't finish her sentence. However, her gaze made Gudelia subconsciously follow her gaze. In the corner of the airship, the maid who had been faithfully following Gudelia did not appear next to her. Instead, she sat alone in the corner of the airship, exuding an aura of self-isolation. This change made Biscat and Atlas, who were unaware of it, feel a little strange, but they couldn't say anything. That's right. The two of them didn't know that when they escaped from the hotel, Lakis' words undoubtedly exposed Fumiton's mask and left a wound in their hearts that might be difficult to heal. Facing Gudelia's doubts, Fumiton's silence was the biggest admission. Let's return to fishing fire first. In the end, it was Ray Minkai who made the decision. After all, what followed next was the critical moment of breaking into Earth under the interception of the Earth's Outer Orbit Command Fleet. Chapter 706. The situation of .3 continued to deteriorate, but the airship driven by Ray Minkai and the others also converged with Firefish. Your Excellency, it's great that you're okay. After understanding Ray Minkai's hint, Olga and the others, who returned to Firefish first and were not affected by the chaos, looked at the people who returned to the bridge in surprise. It was scary but not dangerous. But I didn't expect you to return to Firefish before us. Ray Minkai nodded, looked around at the people around him, and said with some surprise. As expected, Olga understood the hints that Ray Minkai had given him. No. That's all thanks to your guidance. Olga remembered the scene where Lars Horn's soldiers suddenly appeared in front of her and rushed into the warehouse. Olga couldn't help but secretly rejoice. If she didn't understand Ray Minkai's hint in time, they would be trapped in the warehouse and unable to return to Firefish. Is that so? That's because you were able to discover the atmosphere on the colonial satellite in time. Don't take my reminder too seriously. Ray Minkai waved his hand and then walked to the communication device. Now, Fumiton, whose identity was exposed by Ray Minkai and Lakis, was no longer suitable to carry out Firefish's communication. Therefore, the female accountant, Marabede, who was assigned by Divac, temporarily replaced him. Needless to say, when Ray Minkai saw this particularly low-key female accountant appear in front of him, his eyes became a little excited. Because, no matter if it was Melibede or Lux who was standing beside him, their voice actor was the same person. Of course, this so-called excitement came from some distant memories in Ray Minkai's mind. In front of him, Marabede and Lakis were both humans with different memories, spirits, and personalities. Marabede, thank you. Can you connect to .3's live broadcast? Now, I believe Lars Horn won't let go of this great opportunity. Ray Minkai's words had a hidden meaning, and most people were unable to react for a moment. Is it to announce to the world that what they are about to do is legal? Is it to make the majority of the world shut up? Lakis followed closely behind, echoing Ray Minkai's words. Yes. Olga, when you left early, did you see anything? Did you discover anything? Under Ray Minkai's guidance, Olga recalled the Jia Lars Horn armored vehicles that appeared at the right time, as well as the Jia Lars Horn fleet that appeared at the right time. Yes. At first, I didn't notice it. Now that I think about it, the incident that happened on the colonial satellite doesn't seem to be as simple as it seems. It's as if there's a pair of hands behind the scenes manipulating everything. Olga's mind became more and more active. Step by step, he gathered everything he saw and encountered in .2 and gradually condensed the key to the truth. Manipulating from behind the scenes. Could it be that Lars Horn planned this riot from the beginning? Eugene exclaimed. Ray Minkai looked at the equally surprised crowd, then looked at Fumiton, who stood alone and seemed a little out of place with the crowd, and shook his head slightly. Do you think it's impossible? In fact, although this riot was caused by the suffering of the people on the colonial satellite, don't you think the speed of development is too shocking? Olga, when you handed over the goods, did you notice the situation in the warehouse? Your Excellency, what are you talking about? Suddenly, Olga remembered that when they handed over the goods, the neatly arranged containers in the warehouse seemed to have the same conspicuous logo. And this logo was the logo of the party that the Iron Flower Regiment received from Divac. If the goods that the Taiwa Regiment was transporting this time were weapons, then those containers with the same logo were probably the same. Your Excellency, do you think this is a rebellion that has been planned for a long time? Ray Minkai denied Olga's speculation. No. It's not that. It's the truth. After that, Ray Minkai looked at Marabede. At this moment, Marabede's face seemed a little pale. From the looks of it, she had successfully analyzed the live broadcast from .3. I've finished analyzing .3's news broadcast signal. It's now on the main screen. I just hope you're prepared. Olga, Eugene, Gudelia, and the others' eyes changed, and they seemed to have sensed something bad. Put it up. No matter what, we have to know about .3's situation. Otherwise, this ship won't be able to leave this colonial satellite group. Lakis nodded at Meryl Beatty and said. Meryl Beatty nodded silently and pressed the button to switch the broadcast to the main screen. Cha! The instant the sound of the main screen lighting up was heard, there was a burst of deafening cheers. For the future of our children! For the family! On the screen, there were a lot of people. At first glance, there were at least 1,000 people appearing on the street in the distance. But before the team was halfway there, Lars Horn's soldiers guarding the street opened fire without warning. In an instant, the deafening roar was interrupted by gunshots. On the entire street, other than the sound of gunshots, there were only the screams of the people who were hit by bullets and the people who fell in pools of blood. Hey, this can't be real, right? Eugene looked at the horrifying scene on the screen in shock, and his whole body was trembling. Although Eugene had risked his life several times on the battlefield, as a bystander, when he saw Lars Horn's suppression of the unarmed people, he couldn't help but shiver. This is real, Eugene. Ray Minkai said softly. This was indeed real. It was so real that Olga couldn't accept it. Because, in the scene that flashed by just now, Olga saw a face that was dyed red with blood and had lost all signs of life. There was only anger and fear left. He was the leader of the group of people who had met Olga in the warehouse. In just a few hours, the uncle who just treated everyone in the Ironflower Regiment, including himself, as heroes, was shot dead by Lars Horn's soldiers and fell in a pool of blood. The scene in front of him changed, but the face dyed red with blood was deeply imprinted in Olga's mind. Anger? Yes. Olga was very angry now. But he couldn't give the order to attack in a fit of anger and let the Ironflower Regiment get involved in this mess. This is Lars Horn's righteousness? Gudelia, who was silent for a long time, spoke. Maybe. When Lars Horn was first established, it was to protect the peace of the human world. A hint of mockery appeared on Ray Minkai's face. During the sacrificial war and the period after the war, Lars Horn might have been able to achieve its initial ideals. But after the tragic sacrificial war, the heroes of the war that almost wiped out the human race passed away, and this independent organization that controlled the top military force of the human race gradually became rotten. Now, the series of arrangements made by Lars Horn in the Dort Colonial Satellite Group may have been based on some kind of righteousness, but the fundamental purpose had long been corrupted by personal interests. Is that so? In order to achieve the so-called righteousness, Lars Horn can use any means to induce others, to induce the oppressed people on the Dort Colonial Satellite to revolt, and then use bloody and cruel means to kill the people? Gudelia's voice gradually became sharper and more forceful. Her gaze became incomparably sharp. But even so, Ray Minkai was still able to look her in the eyes. This question really stumps me. Gudelia, this is an operation to send some people, some talents favored by Lars Horn, to a high position, and even provide credit to many people behind the scenes. In this turmoil, the only people who paid the price but didn't receive compensation are the people who have been oppressed for a long time. Your Excellency. So you're saying that even if the African Union behind the Dort Colonial Satellite Cluster won't compensate them or even improve their treatment? Maybe. Or maybe not. To break this incident down, whether it's Lars Horn or the African Union, the price they paid is not high. After the incident is over, the benefits they can receive will far outweigh the price. Ray Minkai's words made Gudelia silent. She understood. As the party that suppressed the turmoil, Not only did Lars Horn once again fulfill the obligation to maintain the peace of human society, but he could also use this incident to declare his military force to various economic circles, thereby consolidating his ruling power. The African Union, on the other hand, was happy to watch the thorns in the labor force being wiped out by Gjallarhorn and replaced with more obedient people. Things seemed to be developing, according to Ray Minkai's speculation. No. Gudelia. This incident is far from the critical point. Lakis, who knew the cruelty of the struggle, spoke. How is that possible? They were killed by Lars Horn's soldiers. Gudelia shook her head and raised her hand to point at the dazzling scene on the main screen. No. This is just a small fight. If Lars Horn's plan is that simple, why would the Iron Flower Regiment, and you, Gudelia Lana Bernstein, appear in the Dort Colonial Satellite Group at such a coincidental and subtle time? Lakis used facts to expose Lars Horn's hidden methods step by step in front of Gudelia and the people led by Olga. The Colonial Satellite Group is just a small riot. There's no need to mobilize the Aryan Head fleet under Gjallarhorn to surround the Dort Colonial Satellite Cluster in such a grand manner. Lakis paused, and a cold light flashed in her eyes. I'm afraid that the people who are unwilling to be oppressed will be blinded by hatred and do something extremely unwise when their companions are killed by Lars Horn's soldiers. How is that possible? Gudelia was shocked. Yes, I understand. Next, those uncles will not only raise their assault rifles to resist. Olga clenched her teeth with an unwilling expression. Ms. The daily maintenance of the colonial satellite must rely on heavy machinery to operate. Especially when replacing the outer wall of the colonial satellite and preventing debris from flying from deep space and asteroids, it is especially important. Therefore, I believe that the industrial Mississippi parked in the industrial warehouse and the armed airships parked in the port have already been targeted by them. This was a fact, but the people understood another meaning from Ray Minkai's words. Wait! Eugene raised his hands and gestured back and forth a few times before he said with uncertainty. Your Excellency, you mean those industrial Mississippi and airships may have been tampered with by Lars Horn? Lay Minkai snorted and nodded, agreeing with Eugene's conjecture. Yes, presumably, the people who have been incited already rushed into the unguarded warehouse and drove those MS and airships out. The next moment, the development of the situation was just as Ray Minkai predicted. New light spots constantly appeared in the direction of .1, .2, .4, and .5. The light spots that constantly lit up and quickly flew out of the colonial satellite port. Without looking, one already knew that they were the people who took the most intense, the most extreme, and the most foolish actions under hatred and oppression. They're out. The people were silent. The light spots that appeared from the colonial satellite seemed to be large in number, and the momentum was quite grand, but the people of the Iron Flower Regiment who were watching all of this already saw the result. Because the moment the angry people drove out the MS and armed airships stored in the warehouse and port, they had already fallen into Lars Horn's trap. Those MS, those armed airships, must have been tampered with and could not be used at all. Their only purpose was to be driven out by these angry people as moving targets for Lars Horn. What should we do? Should we attack to support those uncles? Everyone, including Olga, subconsciously looked at Ray Minkai. Not long ago, the people of the Iron Flower Regiment, who just became the masters of the CGS, had a natural sense of intimacy and sympathy for the workers on the .5 colonial satellite. But Ray Minkai didn't look at them. Instead, he looked at Gudelia. What should we do? Gudelia Lana Bernstein, the revolutionary girl regarded as the hope of the Martians. Chapter 707. The news of the death of Nabona Mingo, the leader of the resistance against the company, the African Union, and even Lars Horn's exploitation, was broadcasted live on .3's news. The entire .colonial satellite group was in an uproar. Some people gloated. Some people cried bitterly. Some people, full of anger, led like-minded partners into the company's warehouse and took out the MS stored in the warehouse. They shouted that they wanted to avenge Nabonamingo, that they wanted to fight for the future for their children and grandchildren, and that they wanted to show the big shots who stood at the top all day, exploited them, and treated them as worthless weed. They rushed out of the colonial satellite with the slogan. However, the workers did not know that someone had been waiting for a long time outside the colonial satellite group. In fact, from the moment Nabonamingo began to move and became the leader of the struggle for the colonial satellite group, Lars Horn's surveillance and even promotion had never been absent. Not for anything else. It was for this moment. Using all kinds of methods to attract most of the rebels who hated hated the African Union, and even hated Lars Horn himself, and then catch them all in one fell swoop. So, now it was time. The flagship of the Aryan Head Fleet. When the workers who stole the MS and armed spaceships deliberately left by Lars Horn all over the colonial satellite group appeared, the radar of the entire fleet immediately locked onto them. At the same time, a series of information was gathered in the flagship of the Aryan Head Fleet. Report: the rioters have successfully stolen all kinds of weapons on the colonial satellites we left behind. Now, they are attacking the guards set up by the company on the various colonial satellites in a dense formation. Please give instructions. The long-time plan finally came to fruition. The commander of the Aryan Head Fleet nodded slightly, then waved his right hand and ordered loudly. All units of the Aryan Head Fleet, listen up. Now, the culprits who dragged the colonial satellite group into the abyss of chaos can no longer hold back their arrogance. They are trying to challenge us, Lars Horn, who controls the top force of human society. So, there is only one thing you need to do. That is to make these arrogant people who don't know the immensity of heaven and earth regret living in this world. Ms. Troop, attack. Aryan Head's fleet commander gave the order, and Gretz's fleet, which had been on standby, immediately rushed into the warning circle of the colonial satellite cluster. At this moment, not only was the warning system of the colonial satellite cluster alerted, but even Spinamandi, who was piloting the looted airship, and the workers on the armed airship had noticed the incoming MS army. The meaning of the dense light spots extinguished most of the anger of the workers on the spot. That's Lars Horn's Aryan Head Fleet? How could this be? How could Gretz and Lars Horn be here? The densely packed dots of light were undoubtedly Lars Horn's main MS, Greys. Its firepower, armor, and even mobility were beyond Spinamandi's standard. In fact, in a sense, the furious laborers were far inferior to the well-trained and calm MS pilots under Lars Horn. Of course, those laborers were not incompetent people. Otherwise, even with Gallahorn adding fuel to the fire behind the scenes, it would have been difficult for them to succeed. Calm down. We still have weapons in our hands. Attack. Let Lars Horn and those bastards have a taste of our power. The same thought, the same action, the same thought kept appearing in the hands of the laborers. But when the first fireball lit up in the sector of Dort 3, Gudelia, who was standing in the bridge of the fisherman's fire, couldn't help but clench her fists. Her snow-white skin also became incomparably red. Gudelia, what is your dream? Or, what has supported you until now? Lakis retracted her gaze from Gudelia's hands that were gradually tightening but did not know the pain. She stared into Gudelia's eyes and asked. Gudelia didn't say anything. She only bit her lips and subconsciously looked to the side. But now, the person standing next to Gudelia was no longer there. And the owner of that figure was now standing in an even further place, in an almost undetectable corner, silently watching all of this. She didn't say anything to support Gudelia, nor did she say anything to repent for what she had done and what she had almost done. Gudelia. The person I want to ask is not someone else. It's you, Gudelia Lana Bernstein. Lakis had noticed Gudelia's little action long ago. Ever since she met Gudelia, she had been inseparable from her maid Fumiton. She had also relied on Fumiton. If this maid Fumiton treated Gudelia wholeheartedly and treated her as her master, this wasn't a bad thing. But the bad thing was that Fumiton had been sent by the mastermind behind the scenes who had been manipulating Gudelia Lana Bernstein's life from the very beginning. Thus, Gudelia, who relied heavily on Fumiton, was nothing more than a puppet before she had a clear idea of what she wanted. Fumiton's betrayal dealt a heavy blow to Gudelia. Perhaps she didn't know that after losing Fumiton's support, she was like a lost girl who had lost her guidance, lost and helpless. What's wrong? Is this the revolutionary girl that the Martians saw as their hope? Lakis pressed forward step by step. Lakis became more and more aggressive, but strangely, no one in the bridge spoke up to stop Lakis. This was because Ray Minkai had already left the bridge earlier to prepare for the attack. In order to support Ray Minkai, and to ensure that Fishfire could be preserved in the upcoming battle, Olga, Eugene, and the others had no choice but to use all their strength to prepare everything they could. For this reason, Olga and the others didn't have the time to pay attention to Lakis pressing on Gudelia. The Martians, Lakis pressed on step by step, and Gudelia subconsciously took a step back. But the moment her foot landed, Gudelia thought of the orphans on Mars and the tragedies she had witnessed. No, I've always acted for the sake of the Martians who have suffered and been oppressed. This wasn't an idea, or even a goal that was forcefully instilled in me by anyone. Gudelia clenched her teeth. The scene of her being lost in the slums when she was young appeared in her mind. She had personally witnessed children who were younger than her but starved to death because they didn't receive any food. Even the candy that she had personally given out had almost become the cause of evil for the children who had accepted the kindness from her, Gudelia Lana Bernstein, to be beaten to death on the spot by the other children hidden in the shadows. If it wasn't for Fumiton, in an instant, the memories of the slums in Gudelia's mind mysteriously pointed to a person who had always been by her side and supported her like family. Vmitten Audemos. Fumiton, you were the one who guided me to the slums when I was young, right? The maid standing in the corner raised her head slightly and nodded expressionlessly. Yes, that was based on Nobilis Gordon's instructions. Is that so? The maid's frank admission made Gudelia reveal a bitter smile mixed with helplessness. However, the moment she turned her head and looked at Lakis, the bitter smile had already disappeared quietly. It was replaced by a serious and strong face, as well as a pair of eyes shining with determination. Lakis Klein. Maybe I understand now. In this world, not only are the people on Mars suffering, but here there are also people who are oppressed and exploited like the people on Mars. Gudelia's voice became sharp and high-spirited. If I turn a blind eye to all of this and don't take any action that I can, maybe I won't have any qualifications and face to go back and see the Martians who have placed their hopes on me. Looking at Gudelia's eyes full of determination, Lakis suddenly smiled. Is that so? Then, please don't forget what you just said. Then, Lakis took a step back and stood next to the automatic door. Gudelia, having a firm ideal is a good thing, but if you don't have enough strength, the ideal you insist on is just empty talk. Fortunately, you have enough power in your hands to realize your ideals. Cha! As soon as Lakis finished speaking, a camera pressed under the claws of a pure white lion appeared in front of Gudelia. Boom! Boom! The attack of the Grez forces belonging to the Aryan-Head fleet was fierce and deadly. The well-trained Grez pilots, whether it was the attack formation or the attack methods, were far beyond the imagination of the workers. Even the workers who boasted about how skilled they were in engineering work, such as building the colonial satellite and carrying out small planetary explosions, could not last more than a few rounds in front of these Grez pilots. No! Go to hell! Go to hell! The one-sided massacre finally calmed down the angry workers. But what was the use of this? The workers who calmed down had to face a more cruel reality. Whether they gritted their teeth and turned around with the Grez forces or turned around and ran, they only welcomed the same final outcome. Tat 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 tat. The Grez forces sent out by the Aryan Head fleet were in small teams of 3. They kept attacking the broken formation of the workers in order to make it easier for the workers to find a way to escape to 3. If this meant that the Grez pilots had a conscience, then it was a big mistake. They were merely enjoying the performance of a cat catching a mouse. If this battle ended too quickly, then it meant that the so-called suppression by Lars Horn was just a performance. It's about time. It's time to close the net. The Aryan Head fleet commander estimated that a lot of time had passed. He raised his left hand and was about to give the order to attack. However, something unexpected happened. A faint light suddenly appeared in the shadow of 3. Gretz, who was chasing after a crippled Spiner Rhodey that had lost the ability to fight again, was cut into 2 at lightning speed. Bzzzt. Boom. Gretz, who had been severed in an instant, had just been touched by the leaping electric sparks when a tragic explosion followed. In the dazzling light, the workers who luckily escaped from the scythe of the Grim Reaper looked at the scene in front of them in a daze. It was a pair of beautiful light wings that spread out along with Grez's explosion. That's, as the beautiful radiance of the wings filled the eyes of the labor pilots, the owner of this pair of radiant wings, the Freedom Gundam, had already rushed into the battlefield in front of 3. A one-sided battle? Just what I wanted. The screen in front of him kept showing the destroyed Spiner Rhodey's logo, as well as the continuous receiving of distress signals. As soon as the uninvited guests appeared on the battlefield, they immediately attracted the attention of one of the nearby Glaze's squads. It was a coincidence. The Grez pilot, who was killed by Freedom Gouda, seemed to have a good relationship with the captain of this Grez team. As a result, a scene that could be considered to be exceptionally enraged when enemies met took place. Tat 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 tat. In the blink of an eye, the Grez team that targeted Freedom Gouda decisively launched an attack in a formation with 1 close range and 2 long-range attacks. Tat 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 tat. The 2 120mm short rifles in their hands kept suppressing the Freedom Gundam with medium to long-range firepower. With the Freedom Gundam as the center, the 2 Glaze Shield-type fighters continued to create opportunities for their captain, the Glaze Shield-type fighter wielding a large halberd, to engage the Freedom Gundam in close combat. As the saying goes, an inch longer is an inch stronger. With a large halberd in his hand that had a longer attacking range than Gao Da's dual swords, and with the tacit protection from his subordinates, the captain of the Grez Shield-type soldier felt that he had the key to victory in his hands. On the surface, the rapid and short bursts of fire from the 2 Grez pilots who occupied the medium to long range did indeed further reduce the space for Freedom Gao Da's movement. He had to face the attacks from the medium to long range, while also being forced to deal with the attacks from the shield-type soldier. Tat 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 tat. In the barrage of bullets from the 120mm short rifles, the Grez shield-type soldier saw an opportunity. While Freedom Gouda was pinned down, he swung the large halberd in his hand and went straight to the back of Freedom Gouda, the center of the strange pair of light wings. This attack was bound to end this battle, and it was also bound to destroy this strange airframe that suddenly appeared. However, the final attack that the Grez team imagined didn't happen, because the moment the large halberd in the Grez shield-type soldier's hand was about to touch Freedom Gouda's back, a sword energy flashed across the Grez shield-type soldier's chest like lightning. In the next second, when the gorgeous light wings bloomed again, it was the moment when 3 deadly and beautiful sparks bloomed on the battlefield again. How is this possible? How did he get rid of the Grez team in an instant? How is this possible? The CIC exclaimed in disbelief on the bridge of Aryan Head's flagship. At the same time, A signal that forcibly interfered with the news broadcast channel of DOT's Colonial Satellite Group appeared. I'm Gudelia Lana Bernstein. Now, I'm speaking to everyone on Earth. Everyone on Earth, can you hear me? I want to tell everyone the truth that Lars Horn hid. The girl in a red dress with long blonde hair and a serious expression faced the camera fearlessly, and she even revealed her identity to everyone on the other side of the camera. Chapter 708. The girl in red on the live broadcast that occupied the entire channel. In the universe where the Dort Colonial Satellite Cluster was located, the Freedom Gaude swept through the entire battlefield. That was what the Aryan Head Fleet was facing now. The Aryan Head Fleet commander was shocked. His hands were trembling as he ordered loudly. Quickly cut off this live broadcast signal for me. Quick. The bridge crew who acted first gave him an answer that he could not accept. Commander, we've already cut off the signal. It's just that the other party seems to have used some technology beyond our imagination to firmly control the signal transmission channel. Relying on the communication technology of the Aryan Head Fleet, it's impossible to cut off the other party's signal. What? How is that possible? How could such a thing happen? If it's just the live broadcast channel of the Dort Colonial Satellite Cluster, the Aryan Head Fleet should have completely controlled it. Unless, the moment he thought of a certain possibility, the Aryan Head Fleet commander suddenly raised his head and looked at the screen. It was the tactical interface that showed the mission that the Gretz fleet had already sent out. The one-sided slaughter in the beginning had quietly changed. The reason for this situation was the unfamiliar mech that had a pair of beautiful wings. On the other side of the battlefield, in the cruiser belonging to the Baljevan family, Galio and Lu Lucio were also watching the battle. That mech has appeared. Galio seemed to be eager to try. But even if we act now, it's too late. Lu Lucio calmly explained the various interests that they had to take action now. The changes in this battle are too fast. From the beginning of the labor riot to the Aryan Head Fleet suppressing the labor force to the appearance of that body, it seemed to have happened in the blink of an eye. We've lost the best opportunity to strike. Galio gritted his teeth and finally snorted. Yes, this one-sided massacre changed too quickly. Whether it was the one-sided slaughter of the laborers by the Aryan Head Fleet, or the appearance of the Freedom Gundam that forced the slaughter into a stalemate, Galio had lost the best opportunity to participate in this battle. Even if Aryan Head's fleet backed off from the emblem of the Seven Stars family, they would definitely make things difficult for the Bardawin family in the command bureau after this to regain some face. Although it was harmless, it could make the Baljevan family lose face among the Baljevan family. In order to prevent this situation from happening, the old farts of the Baljevan family would not let Galio act recklessly. Lu Lucio glanced at the slightly angry Galio and smiled. Even if we can't attack, we can already see this good show. The girl regarded as the hope of the Martians, is making her voice heard. On the screen in front of them, Gudelia made her first public speech to the Dort Colonial Satellite Group and even all the humans on Earth. In this corner of the universe, there are many people like the Martians, suffering from the oppression and domination of Lars Horn. The girl in the red dress on the screen had a firm expression, and the determination in her eyes was shocking. This was the live broadcast signal from the Ironflower Group's fishing fire, and it was also sent to all parts of Earth by White Lion State Zero. In the endless electronic data world, the pure White Lion raised its head and looked at the data firmament that flowed with 0 and 1. Every change there was under the control of the pure White Lion. As soon as the data firmament appeared in the cacophony used by Aryan Head's fleet, the pure White Lion would be able to capture it and erase it from the data world. Humph! What a mess! After staring at the data sky that gradually calmed down, the pure White Lion's image quietly disappeared from the electronic data world and returned to the real world. State Zero, what's the situation? Lux asked after seeing the pure White Lion's golden pupils open again. White Lion State Zero nodded slowly and cast a reassuring look at Lux. Then, it's up to Kai and the others now. Eudelia's global broadcast was still ongoing. With the global broadcast, the pressure on Free Gouda also increased. The unfamiliar, powerful, and hostile Freedom Gundam had already become a thorn in the side of Gretz's forces under Aryan Head's fleet. Every time they saw their own Gretz being cut like a fragile piece of paper by the two swords in Free Gouda's hands, all the Gretz pilots who witnessed the scene could not help but feel a chill down their spine and break out in cold sweat. The reason why Gretz was able to become Lars Horn's new mech. Not only was it a reflection of firepower and maneuverability, but it was also reflected in the level of its armor, which was enough to face most of the known enemy's weapons. Unfortunately, the high-frequency vibration sword in Free Gouda's hands was a weapon that Gretz's forces had never encountered before. Pull away! Pull away! Don't get close to this beam plane, engage in close combat. Use your rifles to kill it! After paying the painful price of nearly 10 Gretz pilots dying under the high-frequency vibration sword of Free Gouda, Gretz's forces finally understood that the close combat performance they were so proud of was not worth mentioning in front of Free Gouda. Thus, the formation of Gretz's forces surrounding Free Gouda changed. They all switched to 120mm rifles and short rifles, and fired wildly at Free Gouda. The rhythmic but terrifyingly dense bullet screen instantly enveloped Free Gouda. From afar, Gretz's forces, who occupied all the advantageous attacking positions and locked down Free Gouda's movement path, almost held the key to victory. Now, all he needed to do was pull the trigger and unleash all the ammunition he had on the Freedom Gundam to end this battle once and for all. Seeing this scene, all the Gretz pilots did not hesitate to believe that they would be able to kill Free Gouda. However, at this moment, the Gretz pilots were destined to be disappointed. Because Free Gouda's equipment was not only the two high-frequency vibration swords. In terms of defense, it was also equipped with a piece of equipment that the Gretz pilots and even Lars Horn, who ended the era of sacrificial wars, had never seen before: the PS armor. As long as there was enough energy, the PS armor could have a near-perfect defense against live ammunition. It was as if it was specially customized for Gouda's Predator world. Whether it was a battleship or an MS, the live ammunition weapons they used against Free Gouda, who came from another time and space and was equipped with the PS armor, there was only one outcome: energy output efficiency reduced by 15%, PS armor operating normally. In Free Gouda's cockpit, Ray Minkai casually pressed a button. After looking at a certain data that popped up on the screen, he immediately showed a smile. The PS armor owned by Free Gouda could achieve a cheat-like effect after coming to this Gouda's Predator world. Maybe this can be called a health lock ? Outside, the attack of Gretz's forces was still ongoing. However, the 120mm rifles and short rifles in the hands of Gretz's forces could only cause a series of sparks on Free Gouda's body and had no other effect. In the beginning, Gretz's pilots simply thought that this was because of the thickness of Free Gouda's armor. However, as time passed, they saw that the Free Gouda was still unscathed despite the crazy sparks on his body. An ominous premonition quietly shrouded the heads of Gretz's pilots. How is this possible? Under the intensive fire, Gretz's forces had already run out of ammunition. Faced with the situation of running out of ammunition and the enemy being unscathed, Gretz's pilots seemed to have begun to doubt life. Faintly, a gap appeared in the attacking formation of Gretz's forces that originally occupied an advantageous position. This fleeting opportunity was seized by Ray Minkai without hesitation. "I've been used as a target for so long, it's my turn now." The light wings on Free Gouda's back instantly expanded by 30%, and a series of afterimages appeared, attracting countless bullets to chase after him. "Be careful!" The beam-wing plane is coming. Gretz, who reacted quickly, immediately warned his teammates, but Gouda was even faster than him. In the blink of an eye, Free Gouda rushed from the center of the rain of bullets to the left wing of Gretz's forces. At the same time, he waved the high-frequency vibration blade in his hand and cut two Gretz's aircraft in half. Schwa! Schwa! The cold steel armor was completely useless under the high-frequency vibration blade, and only the final outcome of being torn apart by the terrifying energy of the explosion was left. Although I can block one with one sword, how long will it take? Looking at the marked Gretz on the screen, Ray Minkai counted and found that there were still nearly 80 aircraft. This was the strength of Aryan Head's fleet, right? One with one sword, one with one. It would probably take Ray Minkai and Free Gouda some time to finish them off, right? Of course. Free Gouda had the means to quickly clear the map. However, the only weapons that Gouda had that could cause effective damage to the Predator's aircraft were the two swordfish railguns on his waist. Unfortunately, in this world, there was a weapon similar to the swordfish railguns, but it was regarded as a taboo by Lionheart, and was also jokingly called the gunnail by the netizens. Now, Ray Minkai didn't want to expose Free Gouda's trump card too early. Is this the justice that Lars Horn insists on? If so, then I will never agree with this kind of justice. In order to claim the righteousness that he holds, to mislead others, to frame others, and to cause a massacre of justice. I will never agree with this. While Ray Minkai was dealing with the Gretz's fleet in Free Gouda, Gudelia's speech also came to an end. Gudelia's reproach pushed the global live broadcast to the end. Gudelia's hands were tightly clasped together, and her eyes were full of fearlessness. If my speech is not correct, then you, Lars Horn, go ahead and sink my ship. This was a provocation. It was also a slap in the face. Free Gouda alone restrained all of the Gretz's forces sent by Aryan Head's fleet, and they couldn't continue to suppress the workers. Gudelia, who was in the middle of the battle, relied on words to publicize what Lars Horn had done on the Dort colonial satellite cluster. With these two factors, the Aryan Head fleet, whose movements were hindered, naturally wouldn't give up. However, just as the Aryan Head fleet commander was about to get angry and fight to the death, the communication from the African Union rang. Cease fire. Stop all fighting in the Dort colonial satellite cluster, and leave the Dort colonial satellite cluster as soon as possible. Such a tough request was completely different from the previous request and cooperation with the Aryan Head fleet, but the Aryan Head fleet commander couldn't do anything. As the wings of light blossomed in front of the fishfire again, Gray's troops, who had sealed off all exits, extinguished the flames of their thrusters and quietly stayed where they were, watching the unfamiliar body that they could not defeat despite using all their strength, and the fishfire that was slowly sailing out of the Dot colonial satellite cluster under their watch. The battle is over? Probably. Galio stared at the assault ships that were slowly passing by Aryan Head's fleet. He didn't say a word, but his eyes were more focused on the unfamiliar body that occupied the leading position and led the fishfire to shuttle through the Aryan Head fleet. Next, the Ironflower Regiment's space rats will probably land on Earth. That might be our chance. Chance? Lou Lucio, who was standing next to him, raised his eyebrows as he thought of someone. Really? If you can meet that person personally, we might be able to stop the Taihua Regiment before they land on Earth. That person, that woman? Galio suddenly felt a headache, but he still made a decision in the end. You're right. As long as we can get that woman's permission, we won't have to watch from afar like this time. You're right. Lou Lucio nodded slightly, but he didn't say anything else. Kalta issue. She's the eldest daughter of a 7-star family, and she's also a fleet commander who carries out traditions. Haha. I wonder what will happen when I'm attacked by the Imperial Knight Commander. I'm looking forward to it. Chapter 709. Clang! The moment the blade was pulled out, A cold light shook the surrounding air. The crisp sound of the sword. The cold light of the sword. It was impossible to tell that the sword Rei Minkai pulled out had a history of at least 300 years. This is the legendary sword worn by the hero Agunika Kairu at the end of the sacrificial war of UR. More than 10 years ago, it was taken into the warehouse of the Mondak Chamber of Commerce by the previous generation. It seems that this sword that has been covered in dust for 300 years has finally welcomed a new owner. The man with long silver hair, golden hair, a fox-like mask, a tall figure, and a calm voice was the current leader of the Mondak Chamber of Commerce, who took the initiative to come to the Mondak Chamber of Commerce and claimed to be able to provide help to the Ironflower Regiment. However, Rei Minkai already knew the identity of the masked man sitting opposite him. I don't think I'm qualified to accept this sword worn by the legendary hero Agunika Kairu, who ended the sacrificial war of UR. Rei Minkai glanced at the man who claimed to be the leader of the Mondak Chamber of Commerce, but was actually Lars Horn's special agent Major McGillis. He casually sheathed the sword and placed it on the table. "Ha! You must be joking. With your Excellency's strength, you definitely have the qualifications to accept this sword. Also, other than you, I can't think of anyone else who is worthy of this legendary sword." McGillis didn't seem to realize that Rei Minkai had seen through his identity, and he still spoke at his original pace. Moreover, in order to increase the credibility of his words, McGillis even looked at Nemes and the others sitting on the side. "Compared to me, who is just a bystander, everyone who has followed you all the way from Mars to now should understand your strength, right? Does this legendary sword have the qualifications to be your sword? Everyone should have some understanding of this, right?" Nemes and Olga looked at each other, and the latter scratched the back of her head under Nemes' encouraging gaze. In fact, I don't know the value of this sword. For me, this sword is just a decoration." Olga's words were within Rei Minkai's expectations. After all, to Olga and the others, these antiques were not as useful as a bullet. What about Maynes? After Olga finished speaking, he shrugged his shoulders casually and spread his hands. "Olga is right. To us ordinary people, these things that were left behind hundreds of years ago might only be worth some money. As for whether it was a legend or not, that was another matter altogether. We don't really understand either." The leaders of the Ironflower Regiment and Tabans expressed that they didn't want to get involved in this matter. McGillis was not surprised. This was the legendary sword worn by the hero Agunika Kairu. It was only McGillis' whim that he took it out. After watching the battle on the Dort Colonial Satellite Cluster from afar, watching the Free Gouda, who was holding two swords and spreading its wings of light, McGillis suddenly had the illusion that he was looking at the legendary machine, Gouda Bayri, who was at the top of the 72 demons. God? Demon? Watching the Free Gouda, who easily destroyed the Gretz squad, McGillis couldn't find the words to describe that moment. Only when he was young and in the middle of the night, when he dragged his body that was dominated by pain and scars, he flipped through the bookcase. The moment he flipped open the book that recorded the legend, a tremor surged from the depths of his heart. McGillis slowly took a deep breath and calmed down his slightly fluctuating thoughts. "If you don't think you're qualified to wear this sword, you can keep it as a collection. After all, the Mondak Chamber of Commerce has no intention of taking back the things that were given out. Of course, as the current leader of the Mondak Chamber of Commerce, I don't want to set a precedent." McGillis' firm attitude surprised Rei Minkai. But since he said so, Rei Minkai couldn't refuse. Rei Minkai wasn't unfamiliar with the sword. When he attended the various official activities of the Britalia Empire, and even when he attended the court, as the Empire's knight captain, he naturally had to wear a sword. However, Rei Minkai didn't think that he would have such fate with the sword even when he was so far away from the Britalia Empire. No. Leader Mundak doesn't need to be like this. I'll just accept it. Rei Minkai picked up the sword on the table again. His right hand gripped the hilt and exerted a little force. Clang! The sound of the sword. It was also a dragon's roar. The blade that had been sleeping for 300 years seemed to awaken once again when Rei Minkai pulled it out. The sword light that bloomed made Olga, Eugene, and the others who were standing behind the sofa take a step back subconsciously. Only the three suns and moons who didn't know the situation were still standing behind Rei Minkai. So dangerous. In that instant I felt like I was going to be cut. Eugene patted his chest and looked at the sword that Rei Minkai had pulled out with lingering fear in his heart. Yes. Is this really a sword from 300 years ago? Olga nodded and asked after seeing Rei Minkai sheathe the sword again. It is indeed a sword from 300 years ago. I can use the reputation of the Mundak Chamber of Commerce as a guarantee. After all, the previous leader of the Mundak Chamber of Commerce spent a third of the Chamber of Commerce's wealth to get this sword. McGillis looked at Rei Minkai's smooth movements and nodded with satisfaction. It seems that this sword is indeed very suitable for you. Thank you. I'll remember this great gift. The treasured sword looked completely different when it was sheathed. Rei Minkai knew what McGillis was thinking, but now wasn't the time to say it out loud. Then, the purpose of the Mundak Chamber of Commerce is purely to support the landing of the Ironflower Regiment? When Rei Minkai spoke again, he didn't mention the sword anymore. McGillis naturally knew this, but he was willing to accept it. Yes. It's just that this help isn't just a friendly one. It's to participate in the ideals advocated by Gudelia Lana Bernstein. Ideals? Gudelia, who had been sitting silently on the side, finally welcomed her turn. But this girl, who had a pure ideology not long ago and only knew the cruelty of the world on Mars, immediately saw through McGillis' words. The Mundak Chamber of Commerce wants to participate in the half-metal mining project on Mars? McGillis' eyes revealed a hint of surprise. He didn't expect Gudelia to see through his intentions, even though it was only on the surface. Yes. If we can participate in the half-metal mining project of Daiwas and Nalabas, I believe the Mundak Chamber of Commerce will also gain a lot of benefit. For this, helping the Ironflower Regiment land on Earth is only a small matter. Such a simple and straightforward exchange made Gudelia sigh in relief. Okay. I promise you. As long as we successfully land on Earth and reach an agreement with Abro, then the Mundak Chamber of Commerce will benefit from the half-metal mining project. Great. As expected of the revolutionary girl seen as the hope of the Martians. Then, the deal is done. Now, the Mundak Chamber of Commerce's transport ship has the materials needed by the Ironflower Regiment. Please send someone to receive it. This is also a gift for our first meeting. The simple and short meeting ended. Because the plan to land on Earth was next, everyone went into a busy state after disbanding. Rei Minkai, on the other hand, came to the observation deck and held the sword silently. Why, Kai. I heard from Gudelia and the others. Did the Mundak Chamber of Commerce give you a sword? Lux, who did not want to participate in the meeting with the Mundak Chamber of Commerce, also came to Rei Minkai's side and looked at the sword in Rei Minkai's hand with interest. Yes. This is not as simple as a gift. Lux. This is probably a legend that someone looked forward to. Legend. Lux blinked her eyes in surprise, as if she was surprised. Yes. According to legend, this sword was once worn by the hero Agunika Kairu, who ended the tragic war 300 years ago. A hero's sword? But I don't think it's inappropriate for you to wear it, Sir Knight. After hearing the introduction of the sword, Lux suddenly smiled mischievously. A knight's sword? Rei Minkai's gaze moved away from the sword and looked at the blue planet in the distance. Soon, the Ironflower Regiment would meet the biggest obstacle to landing on Earth. Kalta Yethu. As the successor of the Yethu family, one of the 7 star families, she was also the commander of the Earth's Outer Orbit Command Fleet. Now, she was looking at the report from the Aryan Head Fleet. Iron Flower Regiment? A third-rate civilian security company from Mars? To be able to humiliate Aryan Head's fleet? Kalta's eyebrows furrowed deeply. No matter how she thought about it, she could not imagine that the Aryan Head Fleet, one of Lars Horn's trump cards, would be defeated by an unknown civilian security company. They even lost face and were forced to admit defeat under the words of Gudelia Lana Bernstein. Kalta did not expect such a change in the Dort Colonial Satellite Group incident. In her mind, Lars Horn was undoubtedly a righteous existence. As long as it was a place where Gjallarhorn's fleet and MS's troops could reach, any rebel would be crushed like rotten wood. Commander, there is a communication request. Kalta, who was looking at the information, raised her head and looked at her subordinate with displeasure. It's an encrypted communication from the Barduin family. Barduin family? Kalta took a moment to process. Is it the kid from the Barduin family who is dragging us down? Humph, connect it. They had been friends since they were young, so Karta looked down on Gario Barduin, the eldest son of one of the Seven Stars families. No matter how hard Galio worked and performed, in Karta's mind, the kid was always worried about personal gains and losses, and he was always a burden. Kalta. Long time no see. As soon as she opened the communication, it was indeed Gario's face. Kalta slightly adjusted his sitting posture and responded faintly. It's Commander Kalta. Gario. Don't think that you can do whatever you want just because you completed a border patrol with a man. Gario took a moment to process the information, and he felt a headache. Gario. I know what you're thinking. You want to participate in the battle to stop the rebels from landing on Earth, right? No problem. I can approve your participation in the name of the commander of the Earth's Outer Orbit Command Fleet. But, please do your best. Don't drag us down. Kalta's barrage left Gario speechless. Even if he had thousands of words in his mind, he could not utter a single word in front of Kalta's domineering knight. Luluxiu, who was standing not far away and watching Gario contact Karta, could not help but sigh when he saw Gario's reaction. It seemed that he finally understood why Gario was in such a difficult position. Finally, after putting in a lot of effort and enduring Kalta's poisonous tongue, Galio ended the call. Thank you for your hard work, Mr. Gario. Gario sighed and looked back at Lulucio. Mr. K, did you see that? Hey, what an embarrassing scene. But this is how the heirs of the Seven-Star families get along. Oh? It seems that Mr. Gario is having fun. I'm sorry. That guy, Kalta, had admired McGillis since he was a kid. Just now, you also saw that as the commander of the Earth's Outer Orbit Command Fleet, Kalta was very dissatisfied with McGillis and my sister's engagement. Fortunately, she didn't give us a hard time. Really? That's a bad relationship. Lulucio did not intend to continue the topic of the friendship between the heirs of the Seven-Star families. But I'm afraid we have to be more careful. In the conversation just now, I noticed something. I'm afraid that Kalta Yetu will fall into the mysterious pilot's trap. What? Trap? That airframe? Gario paused for a moment and did not seem to understand. Lulucio smiled faintly and continued. The Seven-Star families were recorded in history from the moment the disaster sacrificial war ended. Every generation of the heirs of the Seven-Star families will appear in various public occasions. Therefore, as long as someone has the intention and the ability to obtain some information about the heirs of the Seven-Star families, it is not difficult. Lulucio's words were undoubtedly a reminder. Gario suddenly understood. You're saying that the pilot will act according to Kalta's personality? It's possible. Chapter 710. Aliadn. This device, which was spread all over Earth's important waterways, was not only a communication and navigation device, but also an eye used by Lars Horn to monitor all the ships that entered Aliadn's control range. No matter where the ships that entered Aliaden's communication range came from, as soon as they appeared, Aliaden would immediately capture the reaction of the Ahab furnace that entered the network woven by Aliaden and lock onto it. Therefore, the strategy of the Earth's outer orbit unified fleet was very simple. It was to monitor all the monitoring data on all the Aliaden ships that entered Earth's landing orbit. The frequency of the Ahab furnace that had already been locked onto would be filtered out, and then it would be decided with the firepower of a fleet. This strategy was very simple, but it was also very effective. At the same time, it was also a very open and aboveboard scheme. Let's see what the Iron Flower Regiment, which is being chased by that brat, is capable of. After setting everything up, Kalta Ishu revealed a relaxed and confident smile. The decision to set up a fleet-level interception net in order to intercept the Iron Flower Regiment's armored ship was already made by Kalta based on the information provided by Galio. She did not believe that a mere armored ship would have a chance to escape in the face of Lars Horn's outer orbit unified fleet. It's here. Outside the network woven by Aliaden, the Iron Flower Regiment's Yuhua was slowly advancing along the network. And at the top of the Yuhua's bow, a blue-black steel giant with steel wings on its back stood there, looking at the gradually growing blue planet in the distance. That, sir. Do you really intend to charge into Earth's whatever fleet's encirclement net alone? The screen in front of Ray Minkai flashed, and Eugene's hesitant face appeared. The landing plan this time was very simple. With the Free Gauda piloted by Ray Minkai as a target to attract the enemy's attention, and Yu Hua as a distraction from the back, and under the cover of the two, the Iron Flower Regiment carrying Lux, Gudelia, Olga, and the others would stealthily drive the shuttle from the edge of the battlefield into Earth's landing orbit. The moment the shuttle reached the landing orbit, the Free Gauda and Yu Hua would accelerate into the atmosphere and return to deep space, escaping from this battle. Of course, this plan itself was an extremely risky one, in particular as the Freedom Gundam that attracted all the attention of the Earth's outer orbit command fleet. The pressure it faced was unprecedented. Facing Lakis's worries and State Zero's volunteer, Lei Minkai only smiled faintly. In this world, as long as the Free Gauda wants to run, no one, no airframe, or even any fleet can catch up to it. Don't forget that the Freedom Gundam still has the Radiance Bearer as its trump card. That's right. For Lei Minkai to have the confidence to challenge the trump card of the Earth's unified fleet, the Radiance Bearer played a part in it. Looking at Ray Minkai's calm expression, Eugene's originally nervous and excited heart miraculously calmed down. Beep beep. At this time, Chad, who stayed in the bridge, suddenly issued a warning. Your Excellency Eugene, we have been caught by Lars Horn's Aliaden. Just in time. Let's go all out. Eugene's mood, which had just calmed down, became turbulent again because of this news. Calm down, Eugene. Yuhua only needs to support the Free Gauda from the periphery. Yuhua was not as agile as the Free Gauda, who could freely shuttle in the dense artillery fire. Therefore, Ray Minkai's initial task for Yuhua was to restrain the enemy from the periphery and attract the attention of the outer orbit unified fleet as much as possible, thus allowing the shuttle to move more smoothly. Understood. Your Excellency. Eugene chuckled. But looking at him, it was obvious that he did not listen to much. In this regard, Ray Minkai did not care about him anymore. When the battle began, the Free Gauda would attract the most attention. At this moment, the guerrilla fleet from the Earth Unified Fleet had blocked all the key nodes leading to the Earth's landing orbit. Kalta's strategy had begun to take effect. At this moment, as long as one saw the battle formation of the Earth Unified Fleet, one would know that the Iron Flower Regiment might not be able to escape even if they had wings. On the other side of this universe that was about to ignite the flames of war, the Mundak Chamber of Commerce's transport ship was slowly pacing back and forth, watching the battle that was about to begin. Free Gouda, through his contact with the Iron Flower Regiment as the leader of the Mundak Chamber of Commerce, McGillis finally learned the name of the mysterious Mecha with light wings. The moment he learned the name, McGillis felt that it was worthy of its name. That unparalleled speed, that amazing power, it was as if an invincible divine soldier had descended from the sky. Free Gouda, let me look forward to your performance. On the eve of the Earth Unified Fleet's battle against the Iron Flower Regiment, McGillis's expectations of Free Gouda grew higher and higher. Close. Along with the results shown by the feedback from Aliadne, the fishfire that had been locked on was gradually accelerating and overtaking Aliadne, who was the closest to the Earth Unified Fleet. In less than half an hour, the fishfire would enter the maximum range of the Earth Unified Fleet's Primus-class warship. 1 Jutland blockade complete. 2 Jutland alert complete. Listening to the feedback from her subordinates, Kalta Aizu thought that victory was already in her hand. She shook her legs slightly and snorted coldly. Such a battle formation might be too exaggerated for a mere armored ship. Immediately after, a warning suddenly sounded. It was the fishfire. It was the fishfire that had entered the maximum range of the Earth Unified Fleet. The well-trained subordinates did not need Kalta's instructions and began to carry out all the warning measures for the fishfire according to the procedure. There was no need to ask about the result. No matter how many times the Earth's Unified Fleet sent out warning signals, the Yuhua, which had charged into the Earth's Unified Fleet's maximum firing range, did not stop the ship. Instead, it moved faster and faster, as if it was going to crash into the Earth's Unified Fleet's formation. Seeing this, Kalta revealed a carefree smile. If they don't stop the ship, then punish them severely. At Kalta's order, the Primordius-class warships of the Earth's outer orbit fleet that had already locked onto the fishfire through Aliadne immediately raised their main cannons and fired wildly in the direction where the fishfire came from. Amidst the roaring gunfire, countless flames exploded in the targeted universe on the spot. Waves of thick smoke spread under the flames and quickly drowned the direction of the fishfire. The dazzling brilliance made Kalta narrow her eyes slightly, but at the same time she also felt unusually proud. In any case, no matter how the Iron Flower Regiment's fishfire was strengthened and modified, it was impossible for it to survive the powerful firepower of the Earth Unified Fleet. However, reality was a slap in the face. Before Kalta could announce his victory, an ear-piercing warning sounded again. It was the fishfire. It was the fishfire again. Report. The target has not been destroyed. The reaction of the Ahab furnace has increased. The target is shortening the distance between us? No. CIC's scream followed closely. There is another unknown reaction. It's not the Ahab furnace. How is that possible? What? Kalta's expression changed several times. Her mood was like a roller coaster that constantly rose and fell. In the end, she was ruthlessly trampled to the ground by Yuhua, who rushed into the barrage against the Earth's unified fleet, and the mysterious airframe that rushed ahead of Yuhua. That's the optical wing aircraft mentioned in the report. Commander! The moment the mysterious airframe raised the shield on its left arm and rushed up against the artillery fire from the Earth Unified Fleet, CIC finally found the information about it. It was from the information provided by Galileo. It had a terrifying speed that surpassed all of Lars Horn's airframes. It had a terrifying armor that even Lars Horn's active airframe could not penetrate. There was also a pair of terrifying blades that had never been seen before and never imagined by Lars Horn's most cutting-edge laboratory. The mysterious airframe that was constructed finally appeared in front of the Earth Unified Fleet at this moment, and it appeared in front of Kalta Yetyu. It actually rushed up like this. How barbaric! Quick! Inform the fleets on both sides to come forward, concentrate their firepower, and shoot down this optical wing aircraft for me. As for that ridiculous armored ship, send a squadron to drive it away. As long as the optical wing aircraft is taken care of, this battle is just a dessert for our Earth unified fleet. Thinking of Galio's description of the free Gauda, Calta, who had always looked down on Galio, suddenly felt unconvinced. In her view, Galio, the kid who was dragging them down, was just looking for an excuse for his failure. As long as the reckless optical wing aircraft that dared to attack the Earth unified fleet head-on was taken care of, then Galio, and even the guy who laughed at her and the Earth unified fleet behind her back, would definitely shut their mouths. Boom! 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 Under Calta's order, except for the 3 heralds that were sent to meet the enemy fire, the main cannons and anti-aircraft cannons of the other heralds launched their most powerful attacks one after another. Together with the missiles that rushed out of the launchers, they poured down on the free Gauda. At this moment, what the Freedom Gundam faced was undoubtedly the most powerful firepower of the unified fleet outside Earth's orbit. Now that's more like it. But in the face of the near-fatal barrage, Rei Minkai just smiled faintly, not paying any attention to the barrage that was enough to drown the free Gauda. In the blink of an eye, the light wings behind the free Gauda flashed. The moment the dense barrage arrived, the free Gauda rushed into the barrage instead of retreating, leaving behind afterimages. He shuttled through the barrage in a dangerous manner. The appearance of each afterimage of the free Gauda was the moment when the free Gauda successfully shuttled through the barrage. Suddenly, in the barrage created by the combined efforts of the Innerfish-class warships of the Earth's unified fleet, a scene that was both exceptionally beautiful and extremely shocking appeared. Steel figures with unfolded light wings constantly appeared in the barrage. Sometimes on the left, sometimes on the right, sometimes on the top, sometimes on the bottom. It was as if the steel giant with wings of light had taken the barrage of the Earth's outer orbit command fleet as a stage, dancing gracefully on that dazzling and deadly stage. How is this possible? Calta looked at the scene on the main screen in disbelief. She couldn't believe that the report submitted by Galio was true. In fact, Galio might even have held back. Thinking of this, Calta gritted her teeth. There was a trace of indignation in her eyes. Attack! 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 No matter what method you use, even if you use up all the ammunition of our Earth unified fleet, you must shoot down this photon plane. Calta's natural paranoia completely broke out at this moment. Although the subordinates were a little surprised, they still did as they were told. In an instant, the heralds of the Earth unified fleet burst out with an attack that was 3 times more powerful than before. Is this the end of the line? Facing the increasingly fast and intensive attacks, the free Gauda could no longer rely solely on speed to break through the barrage. Therefore, the sword was unsheathed. Buzz! A cold light flashed. At the moment when several afterimages dragged past, Zhang Xian was stunned. An oncoming missile had just rushed to the side of the free Gauda when it was split open by the high-frequency vibration soared in the hands of the free Gauda. Boom! In the flames of the destroyed missile, the afterimages of the free Gauda filled the space filled with barrage. At the same time, more missiles blocking the way of the free Gauda were destroyed one by one. Boom! Boom! The bright fireballs were extremely eye-catching in the dense barrage of bullet. Moreover, the dazzling fireballs continued to extend toward the flagship where the free Gauda was as time went by. Quick! Quick! Take down that mech for me! Looking at the fireballs getting closer and closer, Calta screamed again and again, as if she had lost the calmness of a fleet commander. However, no matter how hard her subordinates tried, they still could not stop the unstoppable advance of the free Gauda. Especially when the free Gauda broke through the barrage and rushed to the vicinity of the flagship, the surrounding heralds of the heralds suddenly stopped firing. They did not dare to fire even a single cannon at the free Gauda. He was afraid that before hitting the Freedom Gundam, these cannons would hit the flagship that Calta was on. Quick! Quick! Calta's screams were suddenly cut off, because a bone-chilling cold light had been pointed at the bridge. Chapter 711. From the moment you were rushed into the range of the Earth's outer orbit unified fleet, to the moment when Freedom Gauda fearlessly shuttled through the fleet's air defense barrage, 2 airframes also flew out from the Bardavin family's cruiser located behind the left wing of the Earth's outer orbit unified fleet. They were Gauda, Simonli, and Schwabel Greys. So they're here? Mr. K, it seems that your speculation is correct. Galio looked at the Freedom Gundam's astonishing performance and seemed to sigh. No. It's just a simple speculation based on the performance of the airframe. Lucio didn't take credit for it. In fact, the actions taken by Freedom Gauda were almost all based on his speculation. With the speed advantage that was enough to beat all of Lars Horn's airframes, no matter who it was, they would take the same action. At this time, the blade in Freedom Gauda's hand was already pointed at the flagship of the Earth's outer orbit unified fleet. Not good. Mr. K, don't let that airframe sink Kalta's ship. As soon as Galio's voice rang out from the communication channel, the Simonli had already charged quite a distance away. Furthermore, the instant the Simonli Gundam unleashed its maximum speed, the Simonli Gundam, under Galio's control, suddenly raised its right hand and threw the lance in its hand at the Freedom Gundam. In the blink of an eye, the spear actually managed to block the Freedom Gundam's blade. Although Ray Minkai immediately sensed that something was wrong and retracted Freedom Gauda's blade, it could no longer threaten the flagship of the Earth's outer orbit unified fleet. The lance that pierced through the air and landed heavily in front of the flagship bridge also awakened all of the bridge personnel, including Kalta. Quick! Attack with all the anti-air cannons. Don't worry if you will accidentally hurt your allies. Also, all Ms. Team, attack. After a moment of hysteria, Kalta, who felt that he had just escaped from the brink of death, finally regained his composure and rationality. He quickly and accurately issued the correct orders. The active signals of the Ahab continued to appear at this moment, and in the increasingly dazzling light of the thrusters, they flew out from all parts of the fleet and surrounded Freedom Gauda. And before the Glaze Squadron, they had spared no expense, even disregarding the possibility of accidentally harming their allies, just to completely expel Gauda from the airspace around the flagship. Are you going all out? Ray Minkai, whose attack was interrupted, glanced at the lance that was inserted in front of the flagship's bridge. He raised his head slightly and looked at the sky above the battlefield. As expected, Gauda Simonli was there. The flames from the powerful propulsion engine that was specially installed at Gauda's feet were extremely eye-catching. Even the ferocious anti-aircraft fire and the rapidly approaching Glaze's troops could not conceal the existence of Gauda Simonli. Clang! In the void filled with gunfire, Gauda Simonli swung his sword straight at Freedom Gauda's chest, where Galio thought the cockpit was. This was a fatal blow. Galio knew very well that the Freedom Gauda in front of him was not the kind of person who could fight back and forth with him. If he was slightly careless, he would definitely be cut down by Galio's sword in an instant. Therefore, there was only one chance, and it was in an instant. Galio's idea was correct, but he forgot how terrifying the high-frequency vibration blade in Gauda's hand was. Just as the fatal blow was about to pierce Gauda's chest, Gauda Simonli's sword suddenly stopped, and a broken sword flew out from the screen in front of Galio's eyes. Not good! Galio's reaction was not slow. The moment the broken sword was captured by Galio's electronic eyes, the propulsion engine between Gauda Simonli's feet suddenly roared. With the help of many auxiliary engines, Gauda Simonli forcibly escaped from Gauda's sword. At that moment, Galio's scalp was numb. Because if his actions and the feedback of Gauda Simonli were even a moment slower, Gauda Simonli would inevitably leave something behind by Gauda scars on the armor? Or a broken hand or foot? Or was it his own life? Da. Fortunately, the moment Gauda Simonli escaped from Gauda's sword, the Gretz troops sent by the Earth Outer Orbit Unified Fleet also arrived. They immediately raised their guns and fired, providing the necessary cover for Gao de Simonli. Moreover, what surprised Galio was that a very familiar Gretz, the Gretz Knight Commander type, was among the Gretz troops, surrounded by many Gretz Knights. That body? Kalta? That's right. The familiarity of growing up together made Galio instantly recognize the owner of the body. That's it. Galio, you've done well. Now leave it to our Earth Outer Orbit Unified Fleet to deal with. Sure enough, it was just as Galio thought. The Gretz Knight Commander type that was surrounded by many knights was piloted by Kalta Yetu. Kalta Yu, Galio was suddenly speechless. He couldn't help but think, doesn't this guy know how terrifying that body is? How dare he appear here so openly? Galio, what are you still doing here? This is a diversion. That body appeared here so openly, I'm afraid it's covering most of the Iron Flower Regiment's members to sneak into Earth. The sudden appearance of Kalta made Galio feel a sense of unfamiliarity. The current Kalta's expression was serious and rational. It was completely different from the hysterical look just now. Galio was in a dilemma, but in the end, he nodded and agreed to Kalta's request. Good. I'll leave it to you guys. Kalta, be careful of that body's sword. I'm afraid that Gretz's armor won't be able to withstand the slash of that sword. In the blink of an eye, under the cover of the Gretz troops, Gao de Simonli flew to the flagship of the Earth Outer Orbit Unified Fleet at full speed. After pulling out the lance that was thrown out previously, it directly flew down to Earth. Galio knew that Kalta's conjecture was correct. Now, he could only believe that the Earth Outer Orbit Unified Fleet led by Kalta would be able to stop Gao de Simonli, so that he could seize the key to the victory of this battle. Humph! Did Galio really leave? Looking at Gao de Simonli's back that was rapidly disappearing, Kalta let out a slight sigh and immediately issued an order. At this moment, the sky full of artillery fire stopped. Gao de Simonli, who was galloping back and forth among the anti-air artillery fire of the Earth Outer Orbit Unified Fleet, also stopped moving and looked at this sudden scene from afar. Gretz Knight? At the front, Gray's team, who had stopped the dense anti-aircraft fire the moment they appeared, were extremely eye-catching, and Lei Minkai recognized them at a glance. The scene that followed was even more so. With the Earth Outer Orbit Unified Fleet and the Blue Planet as the background, the team of Gretz Knight that appeared on the battlefield actually lined up in an arrow-shaped formation and raised the blades in their hands at Gao de Simonli in unison. Moreover, the Gretz Knight commander with eye-catching red paint on the shoulder armor and antenna even issued a proud declaration on the public channel without any scruples. We are the Earth Outer Orbit Unified Fleet. 9 years of isolation. Strong and solid. This scene made Rei Minkai speechless for a while. He remembered how he had complained about this line of dialogue when he watched Iron Blood Barbados back then. But he didn't expect that he would have the opportunity to personally face this declaration today. What should I do? Just like the plot I saw back then, with 3 days and 3 months, Zhao Hong and Sino will attack without any scruples? Or is it that, after thinking for a while, Rei Minkai shook his head slightly? In the next second, Gao de Simonli's left hand turned over, and the blade had already returned to the sheath, leaving only the high-frequency vibration blade in his right hand. Then, he responded to the Gretz Knight with a salute. Unexpectedly, Kalta was stunned by his actions. Originally, the so-called 9 years of isolation was just a drastic method she adopted because she was unwilling to accept that she, and even the Earth Outer Orbit Unified Fleet, was looked down upon by the Command Bureau. She didn't expect that someone would respond to this at all. After being stunned for a moment, Kalta's eyebrows trembled a few times, but she still said what she thought. It was just that her voice was not as arrogant as before. Barbarians from the outer circle, Earth is not a place where you can do whatever you want. In order to protect our home, and in order to eliminate the factors that disturb the peace of Earth, I, as the commander of the Earth Outer Orbit Unified Fleet, announce that you will be punished with iron." When Calta made the declaration, the Gret's Knight commander she was piloting pointed its blade at Gao de Simonli. In the end, there was no response on the communication channel. Only flashes of light kept flashing on the screen. That's an optical signal. Calta frowned, but she still activated the analysis program, but she didn't expect the analysis result to make her furious. What? How dare? You want us to attack together? And you say you're in a hurry? Outrageous. The message transmitted by the optical signal was even more arrogant than Calta's declaration just now. There was no doubt. Now Calta's mind was almost filled with anger. Eugene, get ready to retreat. Leave this to me. Understood. Then we'll go first. Eugene, who was still troubled by Gretz's team, heard Lei Mingkai take the initiative to ask them to evacuate first. Then, as if he had thought of something, he hurriedly shouted, "Let's go! Your Excellency! You really don't need us to stay and support you?" "No. Fishfire will only be a hindrance if we stay here." Lei Mingkai's answer was incomparably realistic, leaving Eugene and the others speechless. Fishfire had just turned around and accelerated its retreat. Once more the furious Calta chanted the slogan she had invented. Face the wall for 9 years. Firm and solid. Arrow formation, assault. In an instant, the arrow formation formed by the Gret's Knight rushed towards Gao de Simonli with unparalleled momentum. That imposing appearance made people exclaim in admiration, but also made people feel pity. Clinging to tradition is not bad, but clinging to tradition will only cause people to drown. Facing the arrow formation formed by the Gret's Knight, Gao de Simonli only raised his sword diagonally and assumed a fighting stance. As for the other high-frequency vibration sword that he had previously sheathed, Lei Mingkai felt that he didn't need to use it for the time being. It was just a formation that was clinging to tradition and copying Xianku. There was no need for him and Gao de Simonli to use all their strength. Iron Fist Judgment. While Calta and his men were shouting, the arrow assault formation formed by the Knight of Grez had already arrived in front of Gauda. From Lei Mingkai's point of view, there was nothing to nitpick about this steel torrent charge. To ordinary people, but to Lei Mingkai, this so-called arrow formation was full of flaws. Other things aside, the Grez Knight commander that Calta was piloting was the biggest flaw. As expected, he delivered himself to my doorstep. Calta issue. When Gauda advanced instead of retreating, the slanted blade in his hand instantly launched, drawing a sword light in the air, directly slashing down on the Gret's Knight commander driven by Calta. At first glance, this strike seemed ordinary, but it was already extremely dangerous. Galio's warning was perfectly executed at this moment. As the core of the arrow assault formation, it was also the core of the Earth's Outer Orbit Unified Fleet. The Grez Knight commander piloted by Calta Issue had been specially modified. Whether it was armor or weapons, it was far beyond the level of the Grez Knight. But even such a body couldn't last a round under Gao Da's sword. Bang! Sound couldn't be transmitted in the air, but the sound of the blade being cut sounded in the hearts of Calta's men. Looking at the blade that was cut off and thrown away, looking at the sword mark on the chest of the Grez Knight commander, all of a sudden, everyone began to panic. Quickly cover the commander's retreat. Change formation. Whirlwind formation. As soon as Calta's adjutant saw the sword mark that broke the Grez Knight commander's chest armor, he immediately issued an emergency order. At this moment it was the most anxious moment for the Earth's Outer Orbit Unified Fleet. However, it was also the moment that Lei Mingkai had been waiting for a long time. Since you've taken the bait, then stay here obediently. The so-called whirlwind formation was just to use the high mobility of the Grez Knight to disrupt the target's line of sight, thereby providing cover for the other Grez Knight's actions and obtaining the opportunity to launch a fatal blow. However, this was for Gouda. It had no effect on Ray Minkai. The blade of the Grez Knight, who occupied the attacking position on the left flank, was blocked by Gao Da's PS armor with just a raise of his left hand. And this was not the end. Taking advantage of the moment when the slash was blocked, Gouda opened his left hand and caught the blade of the Grez Knight in his hand. With a burst of tremendous force, he forcefully pulled it from the left to the right, blocking in front of another Grez Knight that was trying to cooperate with the attack. Boom! At this moment it was almost too late to react. The two Grez Knight collided with a loud bang. Then, Gouda raised his right leg and kicked hard at the two Grez Knight that were mounted together, avoiding the attack from behind. As his gaze moved, Ray Minkai discovered that while Gouda was entangled by the other Grez Knights, the Grez Knight, one on the left and one on the right, was quickly retreating with the Grez Knight. Want to escape? Don't even think about it. The light wings suddenly bloomed. When Gao Da's afterimage appeared, he had already blocked in front of the Grez Knight who was trying to retreat with the Grez Knight. In the blink of an eye, when the pair of high-frequency vibration blades were once again held in Gao Da's hands, they had already set off several sword lights that enveloped the two Grez. Between the fragments, when the armor was broken, in the desperate eyes of Kalta's subordinates, the Knight Commander Gretz, who should have been the one to disregard their lives and protect even at the cost of their own lives, was now in front of their eyes. After the Freedom Gundam reduced the Knight Commander Gretz into a stick form, the Gundam carried the broken body and fearlessly flew past the formation of the Earth's Outer Orbit Command Fleet and flew towards the blue planet. Chapter 712. The high-speed Gundam Samonli quickly found the shuttle that was taking advantage of the fierce battle between the Freedom Gundam and the Earth's Outer Orbit Command Fleet to break into the Earth's atmosphere. Sure enough, they're still playing this kind of trick. Mr. K. Are you there? Galio glanced at the shuttle that was constantly zoomed in on the screen after being locked on by the radar. It wasn't difficult to see that the shuttle obtained enough speed before fishing fire entered Aliadn's monitoring range. It shut down the engine and glided close to Earth due to inertia. Otherwise, it would be difficult to avoid the monitoring of Aliadn and the Earth Orbit Unified Fleet. I'm here. Mr. Galio. Is it over there? When Lu Lucio's voice sounded, Schwalb's signal also appeared in Gao de Samonli's radar detection range. No. We have to hurry. I'm afraid Kalta can't stop the attack. After personally experiencing the power of Freedom Gao Da's high-frequency vibration blades, Galio almost didn't have any hope that the Earth Orbit Unified Fleet could buy him time. Now, the only thing he could do was to take advantage of the short opportunity created by Freedom Gao Da being held back by Kalta and the others to capture or even destroy the shuttle. This was the key to determining the final outcome of this battle. Although this is a bit of a blow to the morale, I don't think the Iron Flower Regiment is a team that will only rely on that mysterious body. Lu Lucio seemed to think that Galio's thinking might be a bit too much. Lu Lucio glanced at the shuttle that had discovered them and quickly opened the top cover, then said very calmly. Galio frowned, and the screen in front of him suddenly lit up with a strange yet familiar signal. This is the signal of the Ahab furnace. No, it's the identification signal of the body used by the Mars branch in the database. Is it the body captured by the Iron Flower Regiment on Mars? Looking at the identification signal that popped up in front of him and comparing it to the database, Galio's heart suddenly burned with anger. Although he did not know the reason for this anger, he knew that it would be a great humiliation to Lars Horn if this mech continued to appear as the MS of the Iron Flower Regiment. But now, Galio had more important things to do. That was to get rid of the shuttle as soon as possible. Only in this way could the battle end as quickly as possible. If things continued to drag on like this, Galio could hardly believe what would happen to Kalta and her fleet in outer orbit. Mr. K. Although it's a little abrupt, can I entrust that mech to you? Galio took a deep breath and made the necessary arrangements. No problem. Lu Lucio's response was straightforward. However, Gario didn't know that when Lu Lucio agreed to his request, a hint of mockery flashed across his eyes. Oh la la la! My grand entrance! Watch how my meteor kills all of you! Perhaps influenced by Rei Minkai and Gao Da's activities, Senno, who had just mastered Grez, couldn't wait to join the battle and show off his ability. Sure enough, he's just a kid. However, Lu Lucio saw how Sino excitedly controlled the Kyutin Type 3 that was carrying Gretz, the meteor. Therefore, a mocking smile appeared on Lu Lucio's face. Da-da-da. 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 Far away. As soon as the Kyutin 3 entered Schwalb's maximum range, Lu Lucio decisively controlled the 120mm rifle and fired several short bursts. It was strange. Sino had already noticed Schwalb's attack and had taken the appropriate measures to deal with it. But strangely, he couldn't avoid Schwalb's attack. The 3 short bursts of bullets almost hit the Kyutin 3 that was dodging at high speed. In the blink of an eye, the Kyutin 3's propulsion system was destroyed by Schwalb, and its speed dropped to its lowest. What happened? I clearly dodged it. Senno couldn't understand what happened. He subconsciously separated Grez's Kyutin 3 from the Kyutin 3 and subconsciously controlled the Kyutin 3 to quickly sink under it. Da-da-da. Another burst of short bursts of bullets. The bullets seemed to have eyes as they headed straight for the Kyutin 3. If it wasn't for the Kyutin 3 in between them, the Kyutin 3 would have already fled under Schwalb's attack. Boom. The Kyutin Type 3 that could not withstand the attack exploded. The violent explosion gave the Kyutin opportunity to catch a breath. What is going on? The enemy's attack seems to have eyes. Senno crazily racked his brain, trying to understand what happened. He's still too young. I didn't expect there to be such a young person among the knight's favorites. Lu Lucio's face was calm, and his hand was still pulling the trigger. From afar, Schwalb seemed to be holding the end of the rope, and the Kyutin 3 was being pulled by the rope, allowing Schwalb to pull the rope as he wished. The Kyutin 3 was easily driven by him, gradually increasing the distance between them and the Kyutin 4. Senno! Damn it! Is that guy being held back? Does Lars Horn have such a powerful pilot? In the shuttle, Olga, who was sitting in the pilot's seat, gritted his teeth. He didn't expect the Kyutin 4 to be in such a difficult situation. How about we let Akihiro help Senno? Biscat suggested cautiously. But this suggestion was rejected by Olga. No. Akihiro can't leave the shuttle. We just have to hold on. We just have to hold on until the free Gouda returns. Olga really wanted to accept Biscat's suggestion, but he knew that this was a critical moment. If the Gouda Gusion that Akihiro was piloting left the range of the shuttle, then the hidden enemies would definitely rush out and destroy the shuttle on the spot. This concern was no longer a concern, because when Olga rejected Biscat's suggestion, the Gouda Simonli was already captured by the Gouda Gusion's radar. Is that Lars Horn's new body? Akihiro didn't quite understand the words displayed on the screen. But from the feedback from Aleya's system, Akihiro knew the name of the body that was attacking. Gouda Skeleton. Simonli? Akihiro muttered Simonli's name silently, but his lips suddenly curled up. So what? Enemies should be killed. In the blink of an eye, the Gouda Gusion's head opened, revealing the high-sensitivity sensor wrapped in the head armor. This was one of the modifications used to allow long-distance sniping. When the high-sensitivity sensor was activated, the Gouda Gusion could provide long-distance support or sniping. As a matter of fact, the 300mm smoothbore cannon that was specially arranged for the Gundam Gusion was raised and aimed at the Gundam Simonli that was attacking from afar. Beep beep beep. In the pitch-black void in front of Akihiro, a blood-red cross lit up, and he decisively pulled the trigger. Boom. The moment the bullet fired by the 300mm smoothbore cannon shot out into space, the powerful recoil was also fed back to the Gundam Gusion. But the Gao de Gusion wasn't afraid of the recoil that normal bodies couldn't resist. Instead, he fired one after another at the Gao de Samonli. Boom! Boom! In the blink of an eye, dazzling fireballs exploded in front of the Gao de Gusion one after another, cutting off Gao de Samonli's escape route. It seemed like it also devoured the Gundam Samonli that was launching an attack. In fact, the long-distance bombardment by the Gao de Gusion was out of Galio's expectations, but it didn't cause much damage to the Gao de Samonli. A second after the 300mm smoothbore cannon fired its first round of shots, Galio reacted quickly and controlled the Gao de Samonli to descend. He flew past the bombardment and directly below the Gao de Gusion. For the Gao de Samonli, who had greater mobility than the Gao de Gusion, this was just a piece of cake. However, something that surprised Galio happened one after another. Galio, who originally thought that he could launch an attack from below, suddenly realized that the moment the Gao de Samonli raised his lance, the Gao de Gusion, who was supposed to continue firing, suddenly lowered the 300mm smoothbore cannon in his hand and fired continuously at the Gao de Samonli. This seemingly useless attack made Galio's scalp go numb. Because, as long as the Gundam continued to advance, he would definitely charge into the sea of cannons, and be beaten up by the Gundam who would seize the opportunity. At that time, even if he didn't die, he would probably pay a heavy price. Galio, who had managed to stop the Gundam's charge in time, muttered subconsciously as he felt lucky. Is this the power of Alea sense? My movements were actually seen through by the opponent? The shock only lasted for a moment. Galio knew very well how fatal it was to be in a daze during a battle, especially when his movements were very likely to be seen through by the opponent. Galio would never allow himself to be beaten up or even killed because of a moment of distraction. As Galio regained his composure, the propulsion engine under the feet of the Gao de Samonli shone brightly, constantly giving Gao de Samonli more speed and allowing him to escape from the shooting range of Gao de Gusion. Galio. No. Both sides knew very well that once the Gao de Samonli successfully escaped from the shooting range of Gao de Gusion, the outcome of the battle would inevitably be different. His speed is really fast. However, compared to the free Gao de Samonli, it's still slow. The speed of the Gao de Samonli was getting faster and faster, but Zhao Hong remained unmoved. Because he had already seen and even personally experienced the speed of the Gao de Samonli, which was even faster and stronger than the speed of the Gao de Samonli. As long as he was slightly careless, Zhao Hong and Gao de Gusion would not even have the power to attack. But when facing the Gao de Samonli, Zhao Hong knew that he had a lot of opportunities, even more than when facing the speed of the free Gao de Samonli. Opportunity? Right here. Zhao Hong, who only had the Gao de Samonli in his eyes, silently waited for an opportunity. An opportunity that the Gao de Samonli delivered to his door. From the battle just now, Zhao Hong had already seen the general performance of the Gao de Samonli. Since it was a type that leaned towards close combat, then the Gao de Samonli would certainly not let go of any opportunity to get close to the Gao de Samonli and violently attack. Even if this sliver of opportunity was the flaw that Gundam Gusion and Zhao Hong had sold. Boom! Sure enough, the moment the 300mm smoothbore cannon of Gao de Gusion suddenly stopped firing, the Gao de Samonli was like a fly that smelled blood. After circling around in the air, it raised the lance in its hand and directly charged towards the Gao de Gusion. Its speed was as fast as lightning. It's coming! In front of him was the Gao de Samonli, but Zhao Hong's mind was inexplicably filled with Ray Minkai's words from before. Zhao Hong, if you encounter the Gao de Samonli, then the moment it charges forward, it will be the moment when the Gao de Samonli strikes. One strike? Can it be done? Kai's words echoed in his mind, but Zhao Hong's heart gradually calmed down. Close. Close. The sharpness of the sharp lance caused Akihiro's eyes to hurt, as though before the lance could even pierce him, Akihiro would be pierced through by the sharpness of the lance. Chance! The moment when his eyes were about to be unable to bear the sharp light, Zhao Hong felt that an opportunity was coming. So, he decisively pulled the trigger. Boom! The moment the recoil of the 300mm smoothbore cannon raised the muzzle again, the shell that rushed out of the muzzle headed straight for the Gundam Samonli that launched a frontal assault. The momentum was so strong that Galio couldn't react in time. Boom! A violent explosion rang out. Countless armor fragments were shattered and sent flying by the shockwave set off by the explosion. They rolled endlessly into the endless void, or slid down into the atmosphere below until they were burned to ashes. Success? The 300mm smoothbore cannon's muzzle was still smoking, and Zhao Hong was gasping for breath. The attack just now seemed like nothing, but the pressure Zhao Hong was under was unprecedented. Good job, Zhao Hong. This time you passed. At this moment, a light wing descended from the void and landed in front of Gao de Gusion. It was Free Gao de Gusion. The Freedom Gundam raised its right hand, revealing its tattered body in its entirety. That's it. Major Galio Lars Horn. Zila, there was a strange voice in his ears, but in front of Galio's eyes was a broken screen, and from time to time, electric sparks and blood droplets were floating in the cockpit. Enduring the severe pain, Galio saw the broken body in Free Gao de Gusion's right hand from the broken and shaky screen. In an instant, he was stunned. His previous premonition really came true. The Earth's Outer Orbit Command Fleet led by Kelta not only failed to stop Free Gao de Gusion, but they also lost their lives. What to do? Galio clenched his fists tightly, but a sharp pain pierced his heart. It turned out that his right hand was pierced by a piece of broken glass. That bone-deep pain almost made Galio's heart stop. Mr. K. Let's go. The operation failed. Kalta Shio was captured by the Iron Flower Regiment. Although he didn't say much, Lu Lucio already understood Galio's meaning. Understood. Behind the short answer, Lu Lucio looked at Free Gao de Gusion with deep meaning. Let's meet again on Earth. Night. Chapter 713. Kakik. The violent vibrations were accompanied by waves of shaking, awakening Kalta Yetyu, who was in a coma. When she opened her eyes, the scene in front of her was the cramped cockpit, as well as the shaky, broken screen that was sometimes clear and sometimes covered in snow. Kalta did not understand the situation she was in at the moment. But with the recovery of her memory, Kalta finally remembered the scene not long ago. The sword slashed down like a bolt of lightning, cutting off the attack launched by Knight Gretz, and even knocked him into the black abyss where he lost consciousness, causing him to lose consciousness and fall unconscious. Battle? That's right. Battle. The recovery of her memory allowed Kalta to quickly find what she could and should be able to do at the moment. Her hands quickly pressed a few keys on the keyboard, and the broken screen in front of her flickered a few times. It was no longer as clear as before, but it was enough for Kalta to see her surroundings. Fiery red light, scorching flames that burned everything. The moment the screen was restored, Kalta saw the scene filled with flames. What's going on? Kalta was stunned and did not react for a moment. Behind the flame, there seemed to be a deep darkness, and the looming blue light at the bottom of the lens made Kalta's heart tremble a little. As the ripples in her heart spread, Kalta's hands moved again and again, trying to arrange more scenes that could respond to the program she started. But in the end, in Kalta's impression, all the main scenes that could monitor the situation outside were all lost. How is this possible? In the previous battle, the unconscious Kalta did not know that her body had been turned into a human stick by the Free Gauda, leaving only the broken body. No. There are also auxiliary scenes. Yes. There's also that. Calta, who accidentally remembered the auxiliary surveillance cameras, successfully used the few auxiliary surveillance cameras on the broken body that still responded to the program. But in the next second, the scene presented in front of Calta shocked her. A golden V-shaped antenna. It was completely different from the style of Lars horn that Calta was familiar with. It was a head with more human characteristics, and a pair of golden electronic pupils that faintly flowed with golden light. This was the scene Calta saw from the broken screen. As soon as she saw this scene, Calta's memory began to become active. In the previous fierce battle, the figure of the body that once arrogantly and unreasonably attacked the Earth's outer orbit quietly appeared and gradually overlapped with the scene in front of Calta. Have I been captured? A shocking fact that Calta could not accept seemed to have been placed in front of her. Suddenly, Calta, who could not accept all this, subconsciously changed the camera again, but unexpectedly, she had a clearer understanding of her environment. Flames. Flames again. However, behind the flames was no longer the deep darkness. Instead, half of the scene was occupied by the blue sky. At this moment, Calta understood. Now, she was in the environment. She was not familiar with space, but she was in a device that was rapidly breaking through the Earth's atmosphere. What, damn it! Calta clenched his teeth and cursed under his breath. She understood now. Except for her landline that could still keep her alive for a period of time, the other functions of her landline had been lost. In this case, her broken body was still in the terrible situation of falling into the atmosphere. If this continued, Calta Yetu would inevitably burn up in the atmosphere and become the most ridiculous existence among the younger generation of Gjallarhorn's heirs. However, the resentful Calta seemed to have forgotten one thing. Now, she could still switch the auxiliary camera on her broken body to observe the surrounding situation, which proved that she would not be burned by the atmosphere. Because, in a place where the auxiliary camera could not see, there was a shield. A shield from Gouda, which blocked the burning from the atmosphere. The flames that Calta saw were just bursts of flames when the atmosphere burned Gouda's shield. It wouldn't affect her at all, nor would it affect her broken body at all. Angle adjustment complete. Entering the target orbit, estimated to arrive above the target in 5 minutes. Compared to the angry Calta, Ray Minkai's expression was much more relaxed. It was not the first time for Ray Minkai to break through the atmosphere alone. After setting up the landing program, Ray Minkai had the time to pay attention to the shuttle that was landing not far away. From the scorching flames, Ray Minkai could see the meteor and Gouda Gusion that fixed him on the shuttle. Barbados did not attack? Ray Minkai looked left and right, but he did not see Gouda Barbados. Right now, because of the black barrier caused by the atmospheric breakthrough, he could not contact the shuttle. Forget it. I should know later. As Ray Minkai watched the shuttle's porthole being gradually closed by the heat shield, he temporarily shelved the idea. The flames were still spreading. As the landing program reached the most crucial step, the flames that burned the shield were no longer satisfied with burning the shield itself. Instead, it spread to Gouda's shoulders, legs, steel wings, and even the iconic golden V-shaped antenna were not spared. The burning from the atmosphere finally came to an end. With the disappearance of the black barrier that blocked the communication between the Freedom Gundam and the shuttle, the atmospheric battle had come to an end. Rustle, rustle, rustle. This is... Olga. Freedom. Gouda, can you hear me? The second after the black barrier disappeared, the intermittent communication was transmitted from the shuttle to Gouda. This is Freedom, Gouda received. Seems like we have arrived on Earth. The blue sky, there was a vast and endless sea. And the cool sea breeze with a trace of salty taste made Calta, who walked out of the cockpit, have the illusion of surviving a disaster. Her imagination of being burned to ashes by the atmosphere did not happen. Instead, she was brought to this small island by the Freedom Gundam that had broken through the atmosphere on its own. Born on Earth, Calta naturally would not be unfamiliar with these seascapes. But at this moment, she who was already familiar with these seascapes strangely felt a trace of strangeness. "Woman over there, raise your hands. Don't move." Suddenly, a childish voice sounded, followed by the sound of a few bullets being loaded. Calta looked over and actually saw 2 or 3 little boys pointing their guns at her. Children? Pointing their guns at me? Amidst the astonishment, Calta's anger also rose. Do you know what you are doing? I am the commander of the Earth's Outer Orbit Command Fleet, Calta, yet you little brats actually dare to point at me like this? Calta's stern appearance made the children stun for a moment, but soon their childish faces showed an angry expression. I don't understand this. But we know you are Lars Horn's people. Raise your hands. Otherwise we won't be polite. You! Calta did not expect to be refuted by the little brat. She ignored the threat of the dark muzzle, jumped down from the Grey Knight Commander's body, and quickly rushed to the front of the little brats. Then, under the surprised look of the little brats, she reached out and pressed the muzzle pointed at her. Let go of me. These things are not something you little brats can take. Let go of me. Lars Horn's woman. Stop. Just when the two sides were about to have a more intense conflict, an unfamiliar voice interrupted the conflict between Calta and the little brats. Ryder, go help unload the cargo. Leave it to me here. The little boy who was pressed down by Calta frowned, but he still did as he was told. Good. Let's go. Ryder, who forcibly took back the rifle from Calta, left with his little friends without looking back. There was no longer the tit-for-tat look like before. On the other hand, after looking at Ryder's back, Calta frowned and looked at the person who came. You are their leader? Why did you let the little brats pick up the rifle? This is their way of survival. From Lars Horn's 7 Stars family, you family's eldest daughter, don't use your traditional way of thinking to measure their existence. Before Calta could finish her sentence, the man interrupted her again. Calta's frown deepened, but she understood the situation she was in. They had mysteriously but safely broken through the atmosphere and landed on this small island. All these factors pointed to one fact. She had been captured. What? Not talking. I thought the eldest daughter of the Yu family would be a domineering person. Why are you so quiet now? The person smiled lightly, as if he was expecting Calta to resist fiercely. Calta did not answer the person's question, but subconsciously moved her eyes to observe the situation around her. On the right was the blue ocean, and on the left was the beach and coconut forest. Behind the newcomer, apart from the coconut forest that extended toward the seaside, there was a steel body standing behind the coconut forest. Is that the body? Calta immediately noticed the severely burned shield on the left arm of the body, as well as the burn marks on the shoulder armor and the golden antenna. That's the Free Gouda. At the same time, it's the body that brought you from space to Earth. As for me, I'm its pilot. The person noticed Calta's gaze and casually introduced Gouda. You're the pilot of this body? Hearing this fact, Calta's nerves tensed up, and she subconsciously took a few steps back. Sort of. But I advise you not to step back anymore. Otherwise, my partner may be frightened. If something happens, I'm not responsible. Behind. A huge shadow shrouded Calta in it. She subconsciously looked back and saw a majestic white lion standing on the broken steel body looking down at her. In the pair of golden pupils, there was no light of humanity, nor was there a thirst for blood. There was only indifference, as if Calta was an insect. That's my partner, State Zero. And my name is Rei Minkai, the eldest daughter of the 7 Stars family. I'm happy to inform you that from now on, you're a captive of the Iron Flower Regiment. Clang! The glass of water was slammed against the wall by Galio. He was very angry now, but also very helpless. All the actions did not achieve the expected result. What happened was the unprecedented loss of the Earth's outer orbit command fleet, and the scene where Galileo was forced to watch Gauda and Calta break into the atmosphere in front of him. Battleship, MS. Even the loss of the pilot could be compensated for. However, the fact that Calta U, the heir of the U family, was captured was the biggest loss of this battle. The serious procedure was undoubtedly a direct slap to the face of Lars Horn and the Seven Stars family. Damn it! When can we land on Earth? Galileo let out a roar. Calm down, Sir Galileo. I've already notified Sir McGillis. I believe there will be a disappearance soon. As soon as Lucio's voice fell, a communication came from the bridge. Galileo, Mr. K, I've received the situation on your side. We're now formulating a rescue plan. If you don't mind, you can go back to the Lars Horn headquarters first. The reply from McGillis made Galileo excited. It's McGillis. Then let's go. Mr. K. Okay. Galileo, who was excitedly preparing to return to the Lars Horn headquarters on Earth, did not know that in the synchronous orbit of Earth, on the Mundak Chamber of Commerce's transport ship, McGillis was watching the scene of the Free Gauda breaking into the atmosphere again and again. Free Gauda. I didn't expect you to be able to do this. But in retrospect, with the ability to break through gravity alone, naturally, you can achieve the ability to break into the atmosphere alone. No matter what, I'm more and more looking forward to the Free Gauda, and you, the pilot, Ray Minkai. Chapter 714. Shirmiao Adonghujia. When the former Abro representative was taking refuge in the Oceania Alliance, he was also paying attention to the whereabouts of the Iron Flower Regiment and Gudelia. This was not based on any purpose, but based on the idea of waiting for a glimmer of hope in a desperate situation. He silently watched their actions. Just as he thought, the moment the ship, the youth group known as the Iron Flower Regiment, led Gudelia to the Earth Circle and arrived at the Dort Colonial Satellite Group, the direction of the entire Earth Circle began to change. That's not just any partner. Or maybe the goddess of luck? Shirmiao, who watched the entire process of the Dort Colonial Satellite Group incident, once exclaimed. However, when the Iron Flower Regiment landed on the island he was on, he regretted what he had done in the past. Because, with the landing of the Iron Flower Regiment, a huge problem also fell here. Calta Yetu. This young lady from the Yetu family, one of the 7-star families above Lars Horn, was captured by the Iron Flower Regiment. No, it should be said that the man hidden behind the Iron Flower Regiment had captured her. Moreover, the key point that made Shirmiao feel that things were beyond his expectations was that the moment Calta Yetu, the young lady of the 7-star family, arrived, he learned about the existence of the man hidden behind the Iron Flower Regiment. Ray Minkai. A mysterious man with an ancient Eastern name. A mysterious man who had been missing since the Iron Flower Regiment landed. Even when Olga and Gudelia, the head of the Iron Flower Regiment, came together, they still couldn't find him. The only thing Shirmiao could see was the steel giant standing quietly behind the coconut forest, facing the blue sea, through the open screen door in his room, looking at the coconut forest. Sorry. When people get old, it's inevitable that they will be distracted. Miss Gudelia, Olga, and everyone else, please understand this old man. When Shirmiao withdrew his gaze from the Free Gauda in the distance, he looked at the people sitting across from him again. He saw a face calmly waiting for his response. This was not the calm face that ordinary young people could have. Furthermore, before this, when they had just met, Shirmiao had displayed an amiable and friendly attitude. However, both Gudelia and the young commander Olga exposed Shirmiao's hidden thoughts with a few words. This was an unbelievable result, but it also made Shirmiao feel that it was only natural. Gudelia, Olga, the little fatty Biscat, and the female accountant Mary Beatty were not the only ones sitting in front of him. behind them stood a mysterious man who refused to show himself and had just made Lars Horn suffer a great loss. Is this his guidance? Sure Meow stroked his beard and lowered his gaze slightly. This was his habit when he was thinking. As the former representative of Abro and the person that Gudelia wanted to cooperate with, he wasn't worried that his thoughts would be interrupted by Gudelia and Olga. On the contrary, he wanted to use this opportunity to test the patience of this group of young people in front of him. One had to know that even if someone was guiding him from behind, if his own patience was not up to par, he would still be unable to accomplish anything. Time passed by little. Olga and Gudelia were very good at keeping their cool. Even though the actions of the little fatty behind them were a little awkward, it was still understandable. After all, not everyone could endure the fatigue caused by kneeling. What you said before, I admit that there is such a thing. Personally, I really want to reach an agreement with Miss Gudelia. But before this wish is fulfilled, there are still some obstacles in front of me. We are very clear on this point. Therefore, we will do our best to help Mr. Sure Meow return to the position where he can reach an agreement with Gudelia. This is also the reason why we came from Mars and landed on Earth under the siege of Lars Horn. Sure Meow's words didn't surprise Olga. Even after Sure Meow slowly said those words, Olga didn't hesitate to speak out his own thoughts. Of course, these thoughts were also the conclusions that Olga made based on the actual situation under Ray Minkai's instructions. Is that so? You have indeed surprised me. Ha 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 ha. The old man looked at the determined Olga, then looked at the determined Gudelia, then laughed. Originally, he thought the young people in front of him would hesitate, but he did not expect the mysterious man standing behind them to be prepared in advance. Not only did these young people expose him, the former representative in name, but he was actually just an old man who had fled to another country to seek refuge. But these young people also did not hesitate to help him return to the position of Abro's representative. Very good. You are all very good. Miss Gudelia, it is very good that you can go to Earth in person. So, Olga Regiment, when will you be able to depart? Olga pondered for a moment, but did not make a decision for a while. To be honest, when Ray Minkai told them to meet Sure Meow, he did not include this question. What's more, Olga, who came to Earth for the first time, did not know how far away the island they were on was from Abro. Although from space, the distance was only an arm's length. I need a map and a clear destination. That way I can make the corresponding plans. Olga's reliable performance made Sure Meow laugh. That is, of course. Then, our agreement can be considered as reached. The next thing, I will leave it to the Iron Flower Corporation. Due to someone's guidance, the Taihua Regiment and Sure Meow's first meeting didn't have the same oppressive atmosphere as before. Instead, there was an atmosphere of both sides showing their cards, taking a step back and reaching a final agreement based on their own interests. But on the other side of the ocean, in the headquarters built by Lars Horn in the depths of the ocean. But the atmosphere was not as good as the first meeting between Sure Meow and the Iron Flower Corporation. When the patriarchs of the Big Dipper families stepped into the conference room, which represented the highest authority in Gjallarhorn, the atmosphere enveloped everyone present. After a long silence, no one was willing to speak. Some only slightly opened their eyes and looked at the empty seat under the golden squirrel flag of the Yetu family, one of the 7-star families. There was no other topic for today's meeting. It was all for this empty seat. At the same time, it was also for them. The leaders of the 7-star families, as well as the people who controlled Lars Horn, were still sitting here. Ahem. Is everyone here? Duke Baguranzan, the head of the 7-star Baguranzan family, and also the oldest of the family heads, slowly opened his mouth to speak. As the oldest and most respected leader of Lars Horn, Duke Baguranzan was indeed qualified to speak at this time. In this regard, the people present also stopped looking at the empty seat, restrained their expressions, and waited for Duke Baguranzan to continue. Under the golden falcon flag that represented the Baguranzan family, a slender and pale beard slowly trembled as the oldest man stood up. Today, I gathered everyone here not for other things. It is for her, the little girl from the Yetyu family. Originally, we pitted the decline of the Yetyu family. In order to not let the only bloodline of the Yetyu family wander outside and suffer danger, we placed Kalta Yetyu in the position of the commander of the Earth's Outer Orbit Command Fleet. After all, Duke Baguranzan was old. After saying so much in one breath, he couldn't help but gasp for a few breaths before he could continue. But I didn't expect. The old and hoarse voice tried hard to describe the hatred in Duke Baguranzan's heart. But I didn't expect that Kalta Yetyu would be captured in front of Lars Horn. At this point, the oldest man of Lars Horn couldn't help but choke. In the blink of an eye, only the choking voice of the oldest man could be heard in the entire conference room. Ahem. Duke Baguranzan, please don't be too sad. The one who captured Kalta Yetyu. Duke Baguranzan coughed slightly and tried to smooth things over, but he didn't seem to remember the name of the Iron Flower Regiment that captured Kalta Yetyu. It's the Iron Flower Regiment. It's a civilian security company from Mars. The man sitting next to Duke Baguranzan, who was also the patriarch of the Farid family from McGillis, Isnario Farid, spoke slowly and helped Duke Baguranzan, who had just been engaged to the Farid family. Yes. It's the Iron Flower Regiment. With Isnario's help, Duke Baguranzan nodded repeatedly, but then his brows slowly furrowed. But just a civilian security company was able to capture Kalta Yetyu from the encirclement of our Earth's Outer Orbit Command Fleet? Everyone, do you think it's possible? Even Divaz, who has a great reputation in the Outer Circle, wouldn't dare to provoke us and Lars Horn so arrogantly, right? Duke Baguranzan's question not only stumped him, but also the patriarchs of the other families. In the silence, the choking voice of Duke Baguranzan gradually became softer. When the choking voice of the oldest man could no longer be heard, Isnario Farid slowly opened his mouth. It just so happens that someone can answer this question for everyone. Duke Baguranzan, your son, Gario Baguranzan, was once involved in this. Also, the reason why Kalta Yetyu was captured on the spot, McGillis Farid of the Farid family has also been in contact with it. Although this was only an explanation, everyone present could understand the intention behind it. Then, let them in. Speaking of which, I haven't seen them in a long time. You have to know that our 7-star family hasn't had such an outstanding descendant for a long time. The person who made the decision was still the oldest, Duke Baguranzan. As long as he spoke, everyone silently nodded to indicate that they had no objections. As the door leading to the conference room opened, 2 handsome young men with tall and straight figures stepped into the place that represented the highest authority in Gallahorn. Special Agent Major McGillis Farid greets the Grand Dukes. Special Agent Major Gario Baguranzan greets the Grand Dukes. Haha. Get up. There are no outsiders here. Just treat it as a casual chat. McGillis Farid, Gario Baguranzan, stand up. Yes. McGillis and Gario secretly exchanged glances before standing up together and looking at the patriarchs of the 7-star families. McGillis, tell us what you know. When Isnario Farid looked at McGillis' handsome face, there was a slight fluctuation in his eyes, but he concealed it very well. In the eyes of others, Isnario was just a strict superior. Yes. In fact, this isn't the first time the culprit who captured Kalta Yetyu has appeared. When we were ordered to patrol the Mars branch, we encountered the mysterious mechanical body. McGillis' opening statement immediately attracted the attention of the patriarchs. McGillis Farid. You mean that the body has already appeared on Mars? That Iron Flower Regiment? Duke Baguranzan glanced at Duke Baguranzan and asked. Yes. According to our observation files, the first sighting was near the city of Crissa on Mars. But the original owner shouldn't be the Iron Flower Regiment. Shouldn't be? Have you investigated? McGillis asked Isnarius. Yes. After the Iron Flower Regiment escaped from Mars, I sent people to investigate. The result of the investigation was that when the head of the Mars branch, Connor Kant, abused his power and sent an armored MS to capture Gudelia Lana Bernstein, the mysterious body suddenly intervened in the battle and became the reason why the Iron Flower Regiment escaped from Mars. In fact, this was not the case. For some reason, McGillis didn't tell the entire truth. What he said was only the truth that had been processed by him. McGillis wasn't afraid of being exposed by Gario on the spot, nor was he afraid that Isnario would see through anything. Therefore, when he submitted the report on the Mars branch incident, McGillis had already begun to make some adjustments to Gao Da's sighting report. Mars branch? Could it be that the Mars branch took the initiative to provoke the mysterious body? Duke Baguranzan's eyes widened slightly, and he also looked at his son, Gario Baguranzan. No. According to our investigation, the appearance of the mysterious body seems to be just a coincidence. Galio shook his head and gave an answer that no one could accept. The family leaders exchanged glances, but they didn't make any decision. Cough. McGillis, Galio, after all that talk, do you have any information on that mysterious body? When Duke Bagulan opened his mouth once again, McGillis exclaimed inwardly. However, his expression still didn't change. Yes, Dukes. These are the images we took when we fought on Mars, the Colonial Satellite Group, and the Earth's Outer Orbit Command Fleet. The holographic projection fell like a waterfall. When the image was completed and presented in front of everyone, the family leaders of the 7-star families were immediately shocked by the pair of gorgeous light wings and the pair of invincible blades. A dual-sword MS, it's like. Chapter 7:15. McGillis and Galio's time was over. The rest would be left to Lars Horn's highest decision-making level, which was the current 6 patriarchs of the 7-star families. McGillis and Galio didn't have any objections to this. Galio, are you still troubled? McGillis walked out of the conference room and came to a balcony not far away from the conference room. He turned around and looked at his friend. No, I'm not troubled. I'm just thinking about that group of universe. Halfway through his words, Galio paused. His face showed obvious unwillingness, but he had to admit that the Iron Flower Regiment, which he had always regarded as a space rat, did indeed have the power to threaten Lars Horn. That group, I'm thinking about what they will do to threaten us? McGillis' expression showed that he was unwilling, but there was a trace of joy in his heart. Threaten us? Galio, maybe you've been mistaken about the Iron Flower Regiment's purpose from the beginning. From the beginning to the end, the Iron Flower Regiment was only following the contract with Gudelia Lana Bernstein and escorting her to Earth. McGillis remembered the first time he saw the Free Gouda appear. Fundamentally speaking, they, the Iron Flower Regiment, have never intended to be enemies with us and Lars Horn. McGillis' words didn't satisfy Galio. On the contrary, Galio's face seemed to show unwillingness. This was probably inevitable. Ever since the end of the Sacrificial War, Lars Horn, who had ruled the human world with force for hundreds of years, had unknowingly developed a sense of arrogance and didn't put any forces in the world in his eyes. This was probably the reason why the commander of the Earth's Outer Orbit Command Fleet was captured. Galio, don't show this face. In the end, the person who threw Lars Horn's face to the ground and stepped on it with all his might is holding the heir of the 7-star family, you family, in that group of mercenaries. Although McGillis' words didn't have much meaning, Galio's face suddenly turned incomparably pale as he had heard of the dark side of the conflict between mercenaries. Mackie, are you trying to scare me? Perhaps McGillis was trying to scare Gallo. But in fact, Carta's treatment didn't seem to be any better. On the island where the Taihua regiment landed, in a room in an airport, A young girl who had been forced to change into a maid uniform after changing out of Lars Horn's pilot uniform was awkwardly walking out of the room. Yes, it suits you. Kalta issue. The culprit behind the girl's current appearance was sizing her up with interest. She had removed her strange makeup and revealed her bare face. In addition, she was wearing a surprisingly fitting maid's uniform. You actually let me suffer such humiliation. Do you want to become enemies with us and Lars Horn? Kalta gritted his teeth and pointed at the culprit, almost cursing out loud. If it wasn't for the reservedness of being the only heir of you family that still maintained Kalta's last trace of rationality. Become enemies? Miss Issue. Now, our situation seems to have become enemies with Lars Horn. Ray Minkai glanced at the finger that was almost pointing at his nose, smiled slightly, and said indifferently, "You." Kalta's aggressive words were choked back by Ray Minkai's words on the spot, almost making her unable to say any words of retaliation. Yes. Now, as one of the 7-star families, the only heir of you family, the commander of the Earth's Outer Orbit Command Fleet, I have been captured. In this case, is there any room for reconciliation with Lars Horn? Kalta's head that was filled with anger gradually cooled down. No. Even if I am released, I am afraid that my grandfather and uncles sitting under Lars Horn's 7 flags will not give up. Because this is not a matter of the U family, but it involves the face of Lars Horn and the 7-star families. Looking at Kalta, who was lost in thought, Ray Minkai smiled lightly, then raised his right hand slightly, and the white lion Zero standing in the shadow disappeared. Now, there was no need for the white lion Zero to threaten Kalta with its fierce fangs. You really want to become enemies with Lars Horn? Then, why do you want me to stay? A dead Kalta can make Lars Horn fall into chaos. What made Ray Minkai surprised was that Kalta would ask this question after a short period of contemplation. Oh? I didn't expect that Kalta, who is known as a rigid person, would pay attention to this kind of thing? When Ray Minkai's surprised face was reflected in Kalta's eyes, Kalta only frowned slightly. Inflexible? Is this the evaluation of the Control Bureau? Speaking of which, the guys in the Control Bureau never put me and my fleet in their eyes. This is normal. After a pause, Kalta raised her eyes and looked at Ray Minkai. So, Mr. Robber, what are you going to do next? Do you want to use Kalta to threaten Lars Horn to compromise? Or do you want to use me to achieve something? Kalta's questions came one after another, without the slightest consciousness of being a hostage, as if she was a studious student. No. You don't need to know these things. Before we depart, you only need to be responsible for the clothes you are wearing right now. Ray Minkai had no intention of answering Kalta's question. He raised his hand and patted it, then said to the maid, Fumiton, who walked out from the shadows with a wooden expression. Fumiton, I'll leave her to you. Night. Barter House. Amelia and Lilina were sitting in the middle of the park. Amelia raised her head and puffed up her cheeks as she looked at the brightly lit room. Lilina, on the other hand, was sitting there quietly. She turned her head slightly and listened attentively to the sounds coming from the room. Sister Nunnally, aren't you angry? After a while, Amelia, who felt bored, turned her head and looked at the girl who had been quietly listening to the sounds coming from the room. Angry? The delicate face with tightly shut eyes turned around and shook her head slightly at Amelia. Not at all. Amelia, I'm not angry. Why? It's rare for McGillis and your brother to come back, but you immediately stay in the room and don't come out. What are you arguing about with my good-for-nothing brother? Amelia didn't understand what McGillis, Galio, and Lou Lucio were busy with. She simply thought that they didn't say anything when they came back. They were pointing at the map that Amelia couldn't understand, and loudly arguing about something. Then there must be an important reason, right? Amelia, whenever my brother is worried about something, he will lock himself up and think about it alone. It's not because he hates me, but because he doesn't want those annoying things to annoy me and make me unhappy. So, I believe that Mr. McGillis and Mr. Galileo are thinking the same thing. Really? Nunnally's words made Amelia's large eyes light up, and she asked with surprise. Yes, I believe so. Nunnally smiled faintly. In the room, the three people who were arguing endlessly around the map that depicted Abro's vital points and transportation hubs finally entered the intermission. Galileo, who was racking his brain to figure out what the Iron Flower Regiment would do next, subconsciously pulled his collar open to make himself feel better. Then, he turned around and sat on the sofa. He picked up the glass and took a sip of cold drink without any grace. McGillis, after calculating for so long, what do you think those guys will do? According to what you said before, the Iron Flower Regiment seems to have met up with the former representative of Abro, who was kicked out of his country. McGillis glanced at his good friend, who had already tossed aside his pride of being from a prestigious family, and nodded. Yes. According to the information I received and the current situation in Abro, the person who can take the position of Abro's representative is Henry Fleur. And according to the rumors, she seems to have formed a relationship with one of our big shots, including Lars Horn. Humph. So, that's why the former representative was kicked out of office by the sudden scandal of bribery and fled abroad? Galileo immediately understood what McGillis was trying to say. Indeed. McGillis confirmed Galileo's speculation. As the heir of a seven-star family, they naturally knew a lot of things that the public didn't know and wouldn't spread. And what happened to the former representative of Abro was probably not the first time in the recent history of Lars Horn. So, next, the purpose of the Iron Flower Regiment is to send the former representative back to Abro, and then let her successfully appear before the election? Humph, this is indeed a way to let the girl achieve her so-called dream. Under McGillis' guidance, Galileo quickly understood the entire chain of relationship. That's about it. McGillis nodded and looked at Lou Lucio, who was standing silently next to the map. Mr. K. It seems that you have some confidence? Hearing McGillis' words, Lou Lucio raised his head and looked at McGillis and Galileo with a confident smile. Maybe not, but at least I have some ideas. Oh? Let's hear it. Hearing that Lou Lucio seemed to have a breakthrough, Galileo was immediately interested. Lou Lucio didn't refuse and pointed at the island marked as the Iron Flower Regiment's location. Right now, the Iron Flower Regiment is located here. According to our speculations, this is where they are heading to. Lou Lucio's finger drew a straight line between the island and the ocean. This ocean is undoubtedly a natural barrier for the Iron Flower Regiment to cross. And in this natural barrier, Lars Horn's fleet is already cruising around the island. Therefore, the Iron Flower Regiment can only go north if they want to break through the natural barrier and Lars Horn's obstruction. Go north. Galileo and McGillis looked at each other. This conclusion was not unexpected, because, just now, the two of them already agreed that the Iron Flower Regiment might go north. But Galileo didn't interrupt Lou Lucio. Of course, we already agreed that the Iron Flower Regiment would go north. However, on the basis of going north, I boldly made another conjecture. Lou Lucio's finger drew a straight line between the island and the continent again. That mysterious body might directly cross the ocean and reach Abro's capital. What? Galileo looked at Lou Lucio in disbelief. Based on Galileo's understanding of the MS, there was no MS in the world that could fly such a long distance. No. The Grez used by Lars Horn couldn't fly at all. It could only rely on the propulsion engine to jump long distances. That wasn't flying at all. Not to mention that they had to start from the island on the other side of the ocean and fly across the entire ocean to reach another continent. This was simply a fantasy story. No. If it's that body, it might be able to do it. McGillis thought of the information that was hidden from him. Near the Iron Flower Regiment's headquarters on Mars, the land that was scorched by some kind of terrifying heat, as well as the first time Gauda appeared in front of him. That graceful posture showed that Gauda definitely had the ability to cross the ocean. How can it be? If that's the case. Galio's eyebrows furrowed deeply. Lucio and McGillis both believed that Gauda had the ability to cross the ocean, so Galio had to take this speculation seriously. If that's the case, that mysterious body might take Calta and go to Abro together. Why would it be Calta? As soon as Galio's speculation came out, Lucio casually refuted it. Galio wasn't annoyed. Instead, he smiled confidently. That former representative isn't us, young pilot. If he dares to sit on that mysterious body, then this incident can be declared over. Galio's words implied that the former representative of Abro, Shirmiao Donggu's old body, couldn't withstand the overload caused by Gao Da's acceleration. McGillis also speculated on this point. If that's the case, it's very likely that the mysterious Mecha will bring Carta to Abro first, and then use Carta Yetyu to put pressure on Abro's many counselors to achieve the opportunity to let Shirmiao Higuchi return to Abro? I'm afraid that's the case. No. Maybe it's not that simple. Sir McGillis, Sir Galio. Lucio once again refuted McGillis and Galio's speculation. That body will definitely cross the ocean and go to Abro. The main force of the Iron Flower Regiment will also land in the north, then follow the railway all the way south to Abro's capital. But Shirmiao Donggu won't be here. Chapter 7:16. There were no clouds for thousands of miles, and the blue waves were boundless. On the vast and boundless sea, a Pacific fleet belonging to the Earth's Outer Orbit Command Fleet was cruising along a set route. This was an order directly issued by Lars Horn headquarters. At the same time, it was also a good opportunity for the Earth Outer Orbit Command Fleet to wipe away their shame. In the capture of Commander Calta Yetyu, as the commander, Calta Yetyu naturally had his own responsibilities, but more importantly, it was the responsibility of the members of the Earth Outer Orbit Command Fleet. As a subordinate, not only did he not advise Calta Yetyu not to attack rashly when he did not know the details of the enemy, but he also blindly followed Calta to rush out and cause trouble. As a result, he ended up in this humiliating situation today. This made the Earth Outer Orbit Command Fleet unable to raise its head in front of other fleets overnight. It was even more transparent than before in front of the Command Bureau. In this regard, as the commander of this intercepting fleet, Captain Sishianga had more right to speak. Because, in public, the capture of Calta Yetyu made his career bleak. In private, he had a younger brother named Elis. It was the pilot who had his cockpit pierced by the Gundam's sword on Mars. Captain Lars Horn, who took over this intercepting mission from the headquarters, must have thought that this was a mission that must be completed, and it must also be a mission that must be completed. Beep beep. When a hurried warning sounded, the soldier in charge of radar detection reported loudly on the spot. Reporting, Captain. An unknown target is approaching the air defense area of my fleet at high speed. The target height is 3,000. It's right in front of my fleet. What? Right in front? Height 3,000. Sishianga was taken aback. Then he picked up the telescope hanging around his neck and searched the sky in front of the fleet. Sure enough, Tiana effortlessly found the target of their mission. No. Rather than Sishianga looking for it, it was better to say that after their target was discovered by the Pacific Fleet's radar, it quietly floated in the sky, not avoiding or concealing its existence. Twin swords, wings? Through the telescope, Sishianga saw the twin swords mentioned in the report and the pair of huge wings. However, the light wings mentioned in the report did not appear. This made Tiana somewhat puzzled. However, this wouldn't affect the Pacific Fleet's next move. Target distance? After putting down the binoculars, Tianga's eyes almost burst into flames. We are now within the maximum firing range of my fleet. However, the target's speed seems to be decreasing. Towards the end of his sentence, the radar officer was also somewhat puzzled. When facing Lars Horn and the Pacific Fleet, the radar personnel would either turn around and run or speak humbly, afraid of angering the people of the Pacific Fleet. Now, it was the first time they had seen someone swaggering in and slowly slowing down, walking into the air defense network of the Pacific Fleet as if no one was around. Tiana did not care about this at all. All fleet release Team MS immediately. Then, the battle against MS began. Target beam wing aircraft. D. At an altitude of 3,000 meters, Gouda looked down at the Pacific Fleet with two swords in his hands. Every time Gretz took off from the mothership, it would inevitably be locked onto by Gouda's radar. Unfortunately, the airframes and battleships in this world were coated with a layer of nanomaterial coating that prevented light beams. Although in a fierce battle, these nanomaterial coatings might peel off under the high-temperature impact caused by live ammunition, the process was somewhat taxing. For Ray Minkai, it would be better to control Gouda and cut down 8 streets with a pair of high-frequency vibration swords. Flames appeared. The moment the last Gretz rushed out of the mothership, the Pacific Fleet above the sea fired the first anti-air missile and the first anti-air cannon on the spot. In an instant, the sky where Freedom Gouda was at was suddenly enveloped by a wave of smoke caused by the rapidly approaching missiles. Hum. In the seemingly powerful and thrilling missile attack, Freedom Gouda moved left and right while constantly waving the high-frequency vibration swords in his hands to destroy the missiles that rushed in front of him one by one. Boom. Wherever the swords passed, there was a frenzy of explosions set off by the destroyed missiles. And under this frenzy, the sound waves, fireballs, and even the shock waves were quite shocking. Standing on the deck of the mothership, the Gretz pilots who were wandering around the surrounding sea area, on alert for any signs of Freedom Gouda's escape, were all stunned. If this scene of a fleet exhausting all of its firepower had happened to him, he would have died countless times already. Looking at the fireballs that kept exploding and tearing the sky apart, as well as the anti-aircraft artillery shells that went into the fireballs and flew towards their targets, the pilots of Glazer's army had an illusion that they were unnecessary. Is this all you've got? The fireballs that burst out with dazzling brilliance occupied Si Tianga's vision. The rumbling explosion that shook the sky even shook the porthole in front of Si Tiana slightly. However, Si Tiana, who thought that he had killed the target, received a piece of news. Reporting, Captain. The first wave of attack of my fleet has been completed, but the target is still alive. What? In Si Tianga's exclamation of disbelief, a gorgeous light suddenly broke through the continuous explosion of fireballs, soared into the sky, and disappeared into the higher sky in the blink of an eye. Quick! Go find the light-wing aircraft. Don't let it escape. At that moment, Si Tiana finally saw the pair of light wings mentioned in the report. Although it was only for a moment, Si Tiana still saw the scenery described in the fairy tale. It, riding the wind, rose, it spread its light wings, as the gorgeous and illusory light wings spread out, the blade that judged the world slashed down from the sky, bringing all the people who had committed crimes into the abyss of eternal damnation. So fast. So fast. Save. The air was shaken by the ear-piercing screech, and the light wing that left a trail of brilliance in the sky had already descended above a mothership on the right side of the Pacific Fleet. Gretz, who was standing on the deck of the mothership, had just regained his senses when he saw the cold light that was slashing towards him. Boom! The cold light swept past, and the mothership, including Gretz, was astonishingly cut into 2 halves. The former was cut into 2 halves, while the latter was cut into 2 halves by the vibration blade in Gouda's hand. Starting from the front of the bridge was flattened. Ear-piercing rumbling sounds, The waves set off by the violent explosion crazily shook the Pacific Fleet's battleship that was closest to the unfortunate mothership. Quick! Quick! What are you still standing there for? Quickly attack the target. Don't let it get close to our battleship. The short moment of astonishment did not make Si Tiana fall into a daze. Instead, it made his back shiver, and his forehead was covered in cold sweat. Too scary. Originally, the so-called light wings were just a farce created by a group of people who floated in the universe all day to shirk their responsibilities. But from the moment he saw the light wings, Si Tiana suddenly felt somewhat lacking in confidence. Boom! Boom! Cannon fire once again roared above the Pacific Fleet. But it could no longer be like before, involving Gouda in the violent explosion. No matter how the radar of the Pacific Fleet's battleship locked on and guided, Gouda, who spread out the light wings, could always change direction the moment before it was locked on, leaving the radar far behind. But what could the radar personnel who controlled the radar do? Could they report to Si Tiana? As long as they saw Si Tiana no longer had the confident and arrogant attitude before the battle, and only had his hands tightly holding the railing, his eyes chasing the figure shuttling back and forth in the Pacific Fleet's cannon fire, the radar personnel could not help but shut their mouths. Where's Gretz? Where did Gretz go? Quick, let Gretz intercept that light-wing aircraft. Seeing that the Pacific Fleet's cannon fire was no longer of any use, Si Tiana could only use the last trump card, but he did not know if it would be useful. Therefore, Gretz, who was standing on the deck of the mothership, or wandering in the nearby waters, could not wait for the opportunity to intercept Gouda, and launched an attack on the spot. Is Gretz starting to attack? But can you catch up to Gouda's speed? In the interception net of the fleet's cannon fire, Ray Minkai only smiled faintly when Gretz's attack appeared. He did not care at all that Gretz's troops were among the enemies intercepting Gouda. With a flap of the light wings, Gouda left afterimages in the air. Taking advantage of the moment when the Pacific Fleet's radar was confused by the afterimages, Gouda had already rushed to the front of Gretz's team that was closest to it. Scatter, as soon as he saw Gouda appear, the captain of Gretz's team, who was about to give battle orders, was swept by the vibration sword in Gouda's hand and fell into the deep sea below with his beloved aircraft. Boom! A water column dozens of meters high rose into the sky with Gretz's explosion, and it also blocked the cannon fire that followed Gouda. Boom! Boom! The missile that was blocked by the water column lost its posture for a moment, and like a headless fly, it crashed into the sea and set off a new wave of water columns. Gouda waved the sword in his hand and buried this unlucky Gretz's team in the sea. Voila! Surrounded by the water columns, Gouda dragged the water vapor that was evaporated by the light wings and soared into the sky again. Jean Squad, it's silent. CIC's eyes were wide open. For the Pacific Fleet, Team Jean was the main pillar of the fleet. Such an elite combat power couldn't even last one round against Gouda's sword and was instantly cut down. Jean Squad. Si Tiana clenched his teeth, and the veins on his face almost popped out, making him look particularly ferocious. The bombardment of the Pacific Fleet continued. However, after taking care of Jean Squad, Gouda didn't hover in the sky, but chose to fly across the sea. In the attack just now, Ray Minkai thought of a good idea. Since the water column could confuse the enemy's vision and hide Gouda's whereabouts, Ray Minkai didn't need to be polite anymore. Boom! Boom! Amidst the fierce and dense artillery fire, the Freedom Gundam no longer swung the blade in its hand to cut down the incoming missiles. Instead, it guided them to the surface of the sea, allowing them to crash into the sea and explode into water pillars that soared into the sky. This provided temporary cover for the Freedom Gundam to freely shuttle through the Pacific Fleet. As the water columns rose and fell, Gouda's figure appeared around the Pacific Fleet like a ghost. Every time he appeared, he would definitely be able to take down a Greys squad, or a Pacific Fleet battleship with the sword in his hand. In less than 10 minutes, the Pacific Fleet, which had once occupied this area of the sea and was insufferably arrogant in the eyes of ordinary people, was now filled with thick smoke. The surroundings were filled with steel wreckage that had been engulfed by flames, as well as the terrifying Mecha that sat on the life raft and watched in despair as it spread out its wings of light and swung its 2 swords, burying the Pacific Fleet one sword after another. "Captain, Gray's squad. Everyone is silent." CIC stood up with an emotionless face. In the process of the battle, perhaps CIC tried to help the Gray's squad to fight for a chance of victory. But in the end, these efforts were all for naught under Gao Da's sword. When the last Gray's squad pilot died under Gao Da's sword with a terrified cry for help, CIC understood that perhaps this was his last time. Tiana didn't answer his subordinate, because the sword that almost destroyed the Pacific Fleet was right in front of him. "Do you think this will be the end of us? Barbarians from Mars?" A cold light bloomed. The moment the low roar of steel being instantly cut apart swept across Tiana. It was the moment the Pacific Fleet was destroyed. The crew members of the Pacific Fleet, who were lucky enough to escape from the burning wreckage, looked in despair and fear at the flagship that slowly sank under Gao Da's sword. At this moment, the crew members who were lucky enough to escape seemed to have died along with the flagship that sank into the abyss. Mission completed. Looking at the battleship that slowly sank into the deep sea below, Ray Minkai didn't chase after the crew members on the life raft. Instead, he raised his head and looked to the north. According to their plan, Gauda was responsible for crossing the Pacific Fleet. The Iron Flower Regiment was responsible for landing in the north and going south along the railway. As for Sher Miao and Gudelia, Ray Minkai and the Iron Flower Regiment were not responsible for them. The entire plan was modified by Ray Minkai based on the plan proposed by Olga. The key to the plan was the third team that would escort Sher Miao and Gudelia to Abro, and this team was led by State Zero, the long-toothed lion. Chapter 717. The Pacific Fleet responsible for stopping Gao Da was completely annihilated. When this news was passed back to the headquarters of Gjallarhorn by the survivors of the Pacific Fleet, all the big shots sitting in those chairs were shocked by this incredible news. Apart from Isnario Farid, who had temporarily left Lars Horn headquarters due to some matters, the other 5 patriarchs silently watched the real-time images transmitted back from the area where the Pacific Fleet sank. The raging flames burning the steel warships, the billowing smoke soaring into the sky, and the Jia Lars Horn soldiers struggling to escape from the sinking warships and desperately swimming towards the nearby life rafts, and so on. The gathered images brought an unimaginable shock to these bigwigs, who had always stood at the top of Jia Lars Horn and even human society. The once insufferably arrogant Jia Lars Horn fleet was actually so easily wiped out by an unknown enemy. Total annihilation, a crushing defeat. At this moment, whether it was the oldest Duke Bagurin or the youngest Duke Kazan, they were unable to utter a single word, or sentence to describe their current feelings. After a long time, the oldest Duke Bagurin slowly exhaled. After looking around at the patriarchs, he slowly asked, "Everyone, may I know where Duke Farid is now?" Before Duke Farid left, he asked me to inform you all. He will be Kalta Yuthu's guardian and will personally supervise the rescue operation. Rydal Aryan, the patriarch of one of the 7-star families, answered this question. Duke Bagurin glanced at the usually forthright Rydal Aryan, who had a good reputation in Lars Horn, and slowly nodded. Since it's about the plan to rescue Kalta Yuthu, it's no wonder Duke Farid didn't attend this meeting. But after the meeting, we have to inform Duke Farid of the destruction of the Pacific Fleet. Well, I don't think we need to worry about this problem. After all, Special Agent Major McGillis Farid is still in the headquarters, making final preparations for the operation against the Ironflower Regiment. The one who replied to Duke Bagurin was still Rydal Arian. Although this seemed a little inappropriate, Bagurazin didn't mind. As the new guardian of Duke Kazan, Master Arian naturally had the right to answer the question. Moreover, the other families had no intention of answering Bagurazin's question. This wasn't done on purpose to give Bagurazin a hard time. They were still in shock from the destruction of the Pacific Fleet. McGillis Farid, is it? An outstanding young man. Bagurazin nodded slowly. Then, he slowly picked up his cane and slammed it on the ground. Boom! The sound of the cane hitting the ground instantly attracted everyone's attention. How long has it been? How long has it been since we, Lars Horn, have encountered such a situation since we were born? Duke Arian, in your memory, has Earth, which is like our backyard, ever been in a situation where our fleet was destroyed? Ristal Arian frowned, then slowly shook his head. No. What about Duke Falk? No. What about Duke Barter? The middle-aged man who was questioned by the oldest Bagurazin was stunned for a moment, then shook his head. No. As far as I can remember, Earth is like Gallahorn's backyard. Nothing as terrible as today has ever happened on Earth. That's true. Nothing like this has ever happened. Ever since I was born, Earth under Lars Horn's guardianship has never experienced anything as terrible as today. I believe that everyone here, including me, is just like the new Duke Kazan, encountering something like this for the first time. The old man took a deep breath, then continued. Then, in the hundreds of years since the establishment of Lars Horn, has there ever been anything like this? This question stumped all the patriarchs present. Everyone looked at each other, unable to answer the old man's question for a while. Until Ristal Arian, who was stroking his beard, slowly said a short history. In the history of Lars Horn, there has indeed been a situation where Lars Horn's fleet was destroyed in a short period of time. However, that was a situation that would only appear in history that should have been obliterated long ago. A sharp glint gradually appeared in Ristal Arian's eyes. And that history is what we call the era of the sacrificial war of doom. What? What? Duke Arian? Are you kidding me? That was something that happened hundreds of years ago. How is that possible? As the youngest Duke Kazan among the Seven Stars Patriarchs, Iagu Kazan finally couldn't help but speak. How could something that happened hundreds of years ago happen again now? Duke Kazan, is that what you want to say? Ristal Arian raised his hand to interrupt Iagu Kazan's words, then continued. Although even I find it hard to believe, in fact, a situation that can destroy Lars Horn's fleet can only happen in the era of the sacrificial war of doom. Duke Arian, are you saying that we in Lars Horn should raise the alarm to the highest level now that the Pacific Fleet is destroyed, and then let the world fall into the fear of the sacrificial war of doom? Just because of an unknown body? Duke Falk refuted Ristal Arian's words, but Ristal Arian wasn't angry because of it. No. I didn't mean that. It's just that I used an inappropriate metaphor. Compared to the sacrificial war of doom that wiped out humanity, our enemy now is a human piloting an unknown body, but its performance is beyond the knowledge of us and Lars Horn. After pausing for a moment, a self-deprecating smile appeared on Ristal Arian's face. This is much better than when our ancestors faced the cold and ruthless machines that only knew how to kill humans. Outside the window, there was an endless ocean with a gentle breeze and a bright sun. McGillis narrowed his eyes slightly and looked at the sea outside. After he raised his hand to turn off the communication from the outside world, he exhaled slightly. What a surprise! Amidst the exclamation, the voice of his good friend Galio also came from outside the door. Special Agent McGillis, Major. Not good. Calm down, Galio. If you want to tell me the news of the destruction of the Pacific Fleet, then you can rest assured. I already know and notified Duke Farid, who is out on business. McGillis's calmness gradually calmed Galio down. Then, he showed a bitter smile. I didn't expect Calta's outer orbit command fleet to be so miserable. Not only was the commander captured, but he even destroyed a Pacific fleet. McGillis looked at the bitter smile on Galio's face, then he turned slightly and looked at the endless ocean again. Galio, maybe you won't be happy if I say this, but Calta's current situation, I'm afraid she brought it upon herself. You, who participated in that battle, might know more than me. In that situation, what do you think Calta should have done? Of course, use the fleet's firepower to lock down the airspace and cooperate with the MS Force's attack rhythm to encircle that machine. As soon as the words came out, Galio was stunned. At that time, Calta's actions violated the command requirements taught in the textbook, and it might even be included in the textbook's many failure cases. Do you understand? Galio. Although McGillis' back was facing Galio, he knew Galio's face must be changing constantly. The bitterness on Galio's face gradually deepened. He understood everything McGillis said. He just found it hard to accept Calta's self-inflicted wounds. Even so, we still have to rescue Calta, don't we? This is not only for our childhood friend, but also for us, Lars Horn, and the reputation of the Seven Stars family. Galio's bitterness gradually receded, leaving behind a firm will to save his childhood friend. Yes, you're right. But we have to grasp a new power. Now, this Lars Horn has become rotten in the past hundreds of years, and he no longer has enough power to deal with a new enemy. McGillis turned around again, and when he faced Galio, Galio saw McGillis' eyes flickering with an unknown light, but there was a certain stubbornness in them. Maybe it's time to let this rotten Lars Horn return to his original place. Deep in the ocean, on the mirror-like surface of the ocean, a huge cruise ship was following the planned route all the way north, heading towards a city called Anchorage at the northern end of the ocean. As night fell, the calm ocean was shrouded by the scattered starlight, and it became even more quiet and mysterious. However, under this quiet and mysterious veil, the interior of the cruise ship was filled with jubilation. Amazing! Wow! Exclamations! Exclamations! Cheers could be heard one after another in the cabin. Listening carefully, it was as lively as a carnival. In fact, the situation in the cabin was not much different from a carnival. What the hell is going on? It seems to be noisy outside. Before disembarking, Sher Miao, who was still moving with the Iron Flower Regiment, raised her eyes slightly and looked in the direction of the sound. It seems to be because of the news from Sir Ray Minkai. Gudelia, who had just come from the dining hall, hesitated for a moment before revealing a smile. Sir Ray Minkai's battle was successful. Now, there is no enemy in this ocean that can threaten this cruise ship. Sher Miao raised her eyebrows and seemed a little surprised. Sir Ray Minkai defeated Lars Horn's Pacific Fleet? No. It was destroyed. Minkai has already sunk Lars Horn's Pacific Fleet. The one who answered Sher Miao was not Gudelia, but a girl with pink hair tied into a high ponytail and wearing a purple formal dress. May I know who you are? The unfamiliar girl made Sher Miao's expression slightly solemn. In the Iron Flower Regiment, he was the most unfamiliar. There were only two people he had never seen before. Even Calta Yetyu, who was captured by Ray Minkai, was also seen by Sher Miao when Firmiton commanded her back and forth. Therefore, the remaining two people were probably the pink girl in front of him and Ray Minkai, who was always talked about by the Iron Flower Regiment. I'm Lax Klein. Nice to meet you, Sir Sher Miao. Donghu. Please forgive me for not paying you a visit in time. The pink girl apologized to Sher Miao with a kind smile and walked into the room. At the same time, as the pink girl walked into the room, the girl who followed behind her but was not immediately discovered by Sher Miao made him slightly surprised. Calta Yetyu? However, Sure Meow's expression was destined to be dominated by surprise. The heavy footsteps that followed brought a sense of uneasiness and even fear. It was as if it was born in the depths of human genes from the barbaric era. Once one came into contact with the terrifying memories from the barbaric era, the fear would awaken. "Teacher! Be careful!" The young man behind Sure Meow took a big step forward and blocked in front of Sure Meow. His expression was tense as he looked at the snow-white lion that slowly stepped into the room from the door. In this room that was not considered spacious, if this ferocious beast that suddenly entered the room went crazy, the people in the room would definitely die. "Don't worry. State Zero will not harm anyone. On the contrary, it will be the key to let Sir Sure Meow and Gudelia go to Edmonton first." Lax opened her mouth to stop the young follower and explained the whole story. Gudelia, who had already seen State Zero before, was naturally calm. However, Sure Meow was unexpectedly abnormally calm. He even laughed out loud. "Ha ha ha ha! Is this the Sir Lion that the Ironflower Regiment's half-grown brats are talking about?" After raising his hand to let the follower back off, Sure Meow stood up with his cane and walked to the front of the snow-white lion under Lax's gaze. "Nice to meet you, Sir Lion. I am Sure Meow Donghusuk. Please advise me on the road ahead." Sure Meow's goodwill did not receive a response from the snow-white lion. Instead, the snow-white lion only glanced at Sure Meow indifferently before walking to a place not far behind Lax and lying down. Regarding this, Sure Meow was not angry. "Ha ha ha ha. Looks like Sir Lion still has some temper. Fine. Miss Lax Klein, I hope you don't mind. Although I am a little old, I still like to see new things." "No. Sir Sure Meow, you don't have to mind. Furthermore, you and Gudelia will be sitting in State Zero's cockpit and crossing the ocean to reach Edmonton first. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.